Right, this is going to be another episode of Snake and Banter. And this is an episode with a return guest, which technically I'm going to say almost every episode now because we do a lot of these shows. We have cycled through everyone in the whole scene. So we're back to the first rotation again. And also, I do try like the timings of when I bring people on. So obviously we've had Sam, aka Tech Girl here, who has hosted a number of CS events. Maybe she will host more majors in the future. That would be interesting, right? Welcome back to the show.
Thank you. I think the last time I was here, I'd done like one whole Counter-Strike event, and I was absolutely terrified of both of you. So,
well, you did teach me that, like, the problem is when I made this show, like even some of the weird things, like the fact if people don't know, only I know everyone's points just to check there's no overlap. Like, for example, Maui doesn't know what her points are and she doesn't know what Maui's points are. You can maybe guess, but we don't know. The one downside I realized is I intentionally did that because I actually wanted the people who talk about CS all day, every day, like the Maniacs and the Yankos, to not sort of like guess what the topic's going to be and to have like a fresh reaction. But I realize the downside if you're trying to bring newer people in who haven't done as much stuff in the scene is, it means like, I'll give you an example. If this had been your first episode and then we're like, and then there's this ultimate guy, John Liquid. Well, the joke is that I don't even know who he is. I think I might have watched like one HO game in EPL 2 years ago. And I've never seen this player play. Like I got a different podcast. I even said he was from NA or something ridiculous at the beginning where I just said, I don't know who this player is. So I do realize we on the newer people, we are just throwing you in the lion's den. It's like, right, Maui will now talk about this 47th best NA player. What are your thoughts? It's like, fucking, what am I even working with here? I've come up with something, but you know, you did a good job. You did it. You did a valiant effort. Let's put it that way.
I was very good at just questioning Maui. So every time he was speaking something I didn't know, I just asked him a question.
Well, some would say in many ways, if you're ever in doubt, do just question Maui. It's basically KSCERATO's approach. He starts with, are you insane? He even actually just asks, you know, can he even properly sort of like conceptualize reality before you can get to his point?
To peel back the curtain on KSCERATO right there, he actually says that first, comes up with his point after.
Yeah, he does, clearly. He does, yes. That's the buffer in it. Yes.
I think KSCERATO's prep for that show every single day is he writes down 5 crazy reactions to Maui, you know, like.
Dude, I swear he's even done one where he started with, are you insane? And at the end of the point, just like agreed with you. I'm like, what the fuck is that? Like,
no,
you can't at the end like agree with his point. Like,
sometimes he'll say, are you insane? Then he takes this glancing blow angle off of my point that isn't actually like addressing my point entirely, but it's just finding some way to fight me.
Yes.
And just fight me on a completely different topic midway.
Obviously, people will have seen Sam on a lot of the Feed the Trolls episode. We've got a new one coming out soon. Depending on when this comes out, it'll probably already be out. It's the one about G2 with all the Huxley, Malbs, all that move. We get into that. But the difference is, this is how you know that we've got like, they've got defined what we're doing is. You'll notice on that show, sometimes I even just shut the fuck up. Sometimes I just wait to be asked and called upon, which is it's not my way, but we're trying something new. And also, I will say, here's the genius, Sam, is the reason that show's working is because it's also only an hour and you get to like control when I come in and don't, etc. It actually even seems to appeal to like the people who like, they're not actually haters because they do watch all the content, but they just like mildly annoyed at me. So they feel like you're sort of like the mothering instinct, like you're like, settle down now, I'm going to reel you back in. I think they like that. I think they like that dynamic, believe it or not. They think less Thorin is more.
I think they'd enjoy it, and I think that they also like that I can tell you to stop talking.
Right.
Even though I never really go stop talking, I just interrupt you and carry on. I think that there's the haters that watch for that and they enjoy it. So like, good, we got them over in the end. That's what matters.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas like, for example, when it is my own content, unfortunately, I'm very aware it's my content. Like if anyone wants to see a really funny one, there was one way back where we did like one of those, the 4 Horsemen that we do here on Last Free Nation. It's like an industry show. When it was that one where that guy came on, who was like the esports certification guy, who obviously was a bit of a meme, right? There is a part in that where at one point I was trying to make a point and then Monty goes, I think we should let the guest talk. And I actually just tell him, Monty, shut the fuck up. I just let you talk for like 5 minutes. I'm going to get my shit off now. Then after that, you and him can talk. So understand, you know, I keep that guy chained up when necessary, but it's a bit like that movie Split. He's always in the back there. Like I always say to people, Thorin is just the demon I summoned to just destroy all my enemies. The problem is sometimes I forget to do the banishing ritual and just destroys all my friends too. So that can also happen. Right, let's get into it. So obviously, we always start with the guest here, Tech Girl. So what is your good point? What are you enjoying about
Okay, so I have to preface this with understanding that, of course, I know that G2 is probably going to fall in flames and burn. I'm well aware that Liquid is insane bringing on a player that's no one knows. Okay. It's impossible. I get
There's a bot coming in a second, Maui. There's a bot coming. Come on.
Yeah.
There is a but. I'm trying this new thing of being a little bit more positive and trying to see the sunshine and the flowers. I think a good thing is that we're going to see a lot of young talent in the next few weeks. I think it's exciting that Mobs is coming into the fold. I mean, we obviously just seen Skulls to Fury as well. I think we'll finally actually see his potential because I do believe it's there. I kind of love the idea of Ultimate at Liquid, and I know that everyone thinks this is insane because no one knows anything about him. There's a small part of me that kind of hopes that this is this magical moment where this kid comes in and just pops the hell off. I mean, obviously, my logical Counter-Strike brain knows this is not going to happen and it's probably going to be a mess. But I do like the idea that we get to see a lot of young talent. I get excited when new talent comes in. Kato, for me, was such a good example this year with Donk. The whole, like, can he cope on a stage? Is this going to happen? And he just kept doing well. So I think for Counter-Strike fans, it's always fun when we see new talent. We're going to see a lot of new players coming into Tier 1. And that for me is a good thing. Like, it's always nice to have fresh blood.
I'm glad we're going to see some of them. I just hope they're in the right situation.
Okay.
You know, that's
none of them are. We know none of them are.
That's I mean, I think Ultimate might be good. So I actually watched Ultimate. I watched an Ultimate demo. I saw how he was as an individual. Like, he's a bit of an online noob stomper. I'm not gonna, but he's a damn good rifler. I'm gonna say that. That's kind of a weird thing about him. He's like the next Nika Dawes. He should probably actually, like, positionally with the op. I didn't really love always what he was doing, but I did love when he just dropped it and picked up a rifle. And also he has those instincts that if it's a 2v3 situation, where I think many top tier operators in the world, like say a m0NESY, would just hold the op. He does just drop the op and picks up a rifle. Which
I love that.
I don't know. I mean, I like it. I like it for if you know your limits. If you know your limitations, I'm glad that he's doing that. But I would also, you know, you kind of always hope in the back of your head he is going to be the next m0NESY and can just do everything with the op, because then it just looks much better. And it also just gives the team a different element, as opposed to, like, I'll say this, he's a better rifler than Cadian was. Okay, so that's going to boost them no matter what. And for like his on the fly nade usage is a little weird, but man, he was. Yeah, like, I'm not gonna lie, like, his rifle is damn good. I think his rifling's better than Skull's. So that's kind of a cool upgrade for them overall. I mean, I love Mobs. I don't love the positions he's being put in. Why are they making him an anchor now? So, like, see, you come in with the good, Sam, and I wanna ride that train, but I'm also like, can they just put them in a fitting situation? Because I want to see Mobs play entry positions. I want to see him play rotator spots. But, you know, Nico and Hunter are going to get those. So I'm a little bit disappointed about that. If you want to go for other young talent, I think Cloud9's bringing in some interesting talent. There's some interesting stuff happening there. I think Blast has always had a spoil for riches in terms of there's the player break ends. They get their fall or spring groups, and then they get to be the first
that's where you premiere the
TO.
lineups. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and so they're once again the beneficiary of all these cool roster moves. Unless I think EWC is going to get Skulls' lineup first or something, but either way, overall, I think it's good that we're seeing a lot of new young talent rise. I'm never really against that. Like, I think that one of the worst things that can happen in this space is for people to become old veteran paycheck stealers where they're clearly not holding their weight. And so to give young blood a chance is something that I will almost always favor, but I do just wish that they put them in situations to succeed a little bit more.
Yeah, by the way, she did actually also, I don't know if you mentioned it in the list, I think you mentioned Malbs and Ultimate. She did mention Icy from Carl to C9. That was actually on the list she sent me, so that was also a point Sam made there. But I would just say, on this point, I actually think that the one downside I don't like about this is, I agree with Maui, it's more that, like, if I look at the teams, like, except for the C9 one, G2 and Liquid are big squads to go into. Like, you're going to have huge pressure. And so that's where I get really worried if I hear that anyone's out of position, like the Malbs one is the obvious example. To me, the reason you recruit that, in this case, he literally beat you. So surely you want the guy who beat you to be one playing for you now. Isn't that kind of what you want? You don't want it like, let's just have a worse version of him or a neutered version. Like, if you bring him in, you're bringing him in to be dope. You're bringing him in to be, which is why everyone, I notice, when it was announced in order, hoped it was like, right, Malbs joins, but that means Nico's IGL now. Everyone hoped it was like both at the same time so they could like make some space for him and give him his roles, etc. That's a concern I have. One thing I'll say is I think that's good about the gambles, though, is I also think this is actually somewhat necessitated by how crazy the transfer market is and the fact that, as I mentioned on past shows, forget the big name players who can cost you millions now. There are players who've never done anything at a major where people are asking for $700,000 and at the moment they're sat on enough of the contract, they can just wait great. And some of those players, the joke is, still are on like Forza. Not even like it's not like another team buys them for the 600k and you didn't get the bidding price. It's like, it seems like they either want a giant bag or we're just going to keep him. And so in a world where that's the case, actually you can't do what we used to have in old CS. In old CS, there was almost like a ladder you moved up. Like in the Danish scene, maybe you started on Snappy's team, then you went to MSL's team, and if you did well, you went to Astralis. Like there could be like a ladder you I feel like now, essentially in that analogy, the top team has to just gamble that the guy on Snappy's team one day could be good enough for Astralis, and they have to just sign him when they're Astralis. So you have to take some big gambles here, but I don't hate them. Like, I'll give you the obvious one for me is, I actually think the Malbs guy, I've already seen enough eye tests that if you gave him his roles, he would be good. I just don't know if they will. The other two, who are the AWPers, I'll actually make like, I think more of a philosophical point maybe people will miss here, which is, of all the roles in CS, the only other role that is as limited as AWPer is in-game leader, because there's only one per team. And the fact there's one per team means, first of all, both those roles, you notice, if you're established, you get to sort of stay at the top even when you're not the best, because you're some legendary AWPer or some legendary IGL. But it also means it's really hard to break through, because when people gamble on you, like IGL, they're really gambling everything on you. So I actually think, like, the Icy one's the one I have more hope for. I actually think he could be good. I thought he was a decent enough player in Amcal. I don't know about the ultimate one, but I'll say this, Maui. People are going to think, because they don't even know him, they have no clue who he is, he can't be good. But I'll just say, like I say, if only 15 AWPers can be in the top 15 teams, it is entirely plausible at the AWP position there could be cracked out talents out there. There could be people who are really good and could develop really fast at the top when they get thrown in the mix. It's just that they weren't either a really established name or they weren't the most obvious person to pick up. I feel like Rifle, naturally, because they can be put in different roles, there's just more ways and for a rifler, you should rise to the top. The cream should rise to the top. Like, if you haven't made it after 2 or 3 years, there's probably a reason why. But no, I'm with you. I actually think these aren't terrible moves. Look, later on in some other points, we might have reasons we might castigate some of the teams for these specific signings, but she framed it well. She framed that she wants to see new talent. Also, by the way, I will say that is like a classic female desk host angle of sort of like, I just love seeing people see their dreams through and do it. Like, the best example was Smix isn't joking. Smix used to actually have matches at tournaments where she would, in the green room, even tell us, I just love player X from team A and player Y from team B, so no matter who wins, I'm going to be crying for the other guy. And I was like, what are you, this is just why I'm very masculine. I was like, fuck the guy who loses, get him out. Like, you know, like, but again, you're very much, you're hooking into the personalities here. You're hoping for the best, right, Sam?
I'm trying. I mean, that's why I started it with this whole new positive mantra, because there was, when I was writing this down on the good points, I was like, I mean, Icy was the first one. There's that whole Amcal Cloud9 drama. Like, I don't know what the hell's going on there. G2, I would like to believe they're going to change the way they play and make it work for Malbs, but I know they won't. Liquid, I think this might be a crash and burn, but there is a chance. There is a chance that we see a little bit of gold. I think the Esports World Cup, we get to see G2 and FURIA first, and then after that is Blast. But like, I just want to be happy for the young guys before everything goes to shit and they get ripped apart.
You should make this part of your personality. You should make it a bit like that villain from like the Powerpuff Girls, where it was like half like a sort of princess character and it was half like an evil sort of you just flip. So on the one hand, like, I'm really positive, but at the same time, probably crash and burn. Like, how can they? But you know, believe in them, give them a chance. Come on, Maui. What?
No, honestly, it's Tech girls learning from Hedge. They should all just be celebrated.
Okay.
Everyone should be celebrated.
As if Maui on camera is actually bringing that up as well, like the really awkward moment that we're all trying to pretend didn't happen. And no, it's one thing to say when someone else is in. She was there. She can't say anything about that.
I know,
it's really awkward. You gagged her on this one.
That's why I had to do it. That's why it was just the lowest hanging fruit possible right there. Okay. Yeah, I'll get my.
Go for it.
Let me get my good point out. Okay, so I'm happy that we're finally going to get to see this guy play again. I feel like there's been multiple times when there's been discussions in the rumor mill about like who could fit this particular role. And I feel like at this point, even though maybe G2 threw him a little bit of shade on his departure, that he wasn't the easiest guy to work with, I'm glad that JKS is getting another lease with Liquid. I feel like in terms of role for Skulls, this is a perfect fit. I feel like his individual ability far surpasses Skulls. His communication will be better than Skulls. Even if he's a little bit emo, I would take an emo Australian over a guy that's speaking his second language for the very first time with a good attitude. So I'm glad that JKS is going to be on this team. I feel like this actually, even in this weird shuffle of them getting a completely unproven offer in Ultimate, I feel like JKS is a much more stable force. And no, JKS wasn't always the sickest anchor player in every single tournament for G2. He had his ups, he had his downs. He was not always a bastion of consistency. That being said, when his highs are high, it doesn't even matter if Hooksy's calling. Like, it doesn't matter who's the IGL of that team. It doesn't matter if Twistzz is the IGL, because he's going to contribute in massive ways, as will Naf, as will Twistzz himself. And if you see any sort of form from Twistzz, if he's able to retain any form at all as an individual while he's calling, I actually feel like this team has better opportunities to do more damage than they did in the first half of the year. Because it really felt like this was a dire situation for Liquid, if I want to even just frame their whole year so far. Because season 1, most of us had great expectations for that Liquid roster.
Sure.
There were some hesitations here and there. Like, I mean, I had mine for Skulls, and some people had can the system work and everything like that. And yeah, I still have a hesitation about can Twistzz be an IGL? That to me is the biggest question mark. And the second biggest question is not even Ultimate for me, because I kind of see what he is. It's more, can Twistzz maintain form? Can he IGL? And also, can Yakindar regain form? Because that, to me, is more questionable than even Ultimate, even JKS. And so, overall, glad to see that JKS is on a team, because I wouldn't have also wanted to see them put, I don't know, like, is Yakindar or Twistzz going to have to anchor if they pick up some other player? Like, I'm just glad that it's not one of them. I want them to retain their roles. That's all I'm saying. I want Twistzz to play his spots, Naf to play his spots, Yakindar to play his spots, Ultimate's the opper, and now JKS is the perfect one-to-one for Skull, so I'm glad that he's on the team.
Right, here's the meta read, Tech Girl, which is technically all he said to me for the good point was JKS to Liquid. But he doesn't know, like I've said before, what our points are. So he's already guessing, what if no one talks about Liquid? So he's just putting all his fucking takes about Liquid right in there. Like, I noticed by the end, it was like, there's no more JKS. Oh, yeah, JKS. And JKS was a good move to the guy. So you don't have to adjust all that. Obviously, if one of us was to have a point about Liquid later, we can save that part to them. But what do you think on the JKS move? JKS to Liquid?
I love a revenge story. So, I mean, I was rooting for Caden when he came to Liquid with the whole stabby thing. I kind of wanted, I like watching that. I love watching I love watching two teams go at each other and there's like actual like stakes in the game and a little bit of bad blood, even if it's made up and pretend on the desk, which is what we like to do. I feel like it's good that he's back. I want to see Liquid play G2. I want him to beat them. And I'll laugh hysterically while I'm doing it, because that to me is always fun. And I just also think, I do think that the way that whole thing went down just felt really disingenuous. I mean, like Maui said, he wasn't completely consistent, but he was a world-class player, and on his good days, he was phenomenal. And it felt like that whole, oh, we're getting rid of him, and he's emo, and he's this. There was no, like, substance to that argument, and I hated it. So I'm glad he's back. I hope that his form is going to be there. With regards to how it goes, that's maybe a conversation for later in the episode, but I do think it's good, and I'm glad that he's back. I think it would have been sad if his story had ended there after being let go from G2, so it's nice that it continues.
By the way, coming from South Africa, do you have like a natural affinity when you see like the Aussies trying to make it? Do you pull for people trying to make it in the bigger regions when they're from the smaller regions?
I mean, South Africans notoriously don't like Australians.
Oh, right.
We have like weird, right?
I guess the rugby and stuff.
Rugby.
Okay, sure.
Also, like, there's, yeah, I mean, that would always be the joke. And Australians don't like South Africans because most South African racists left South Africa and moved to Australia. So it's a very complex Southern Hemisphere.
I wasn't aware there was all this Commonwealth bickering. I thought we were just loving everyone. I thought it was all cool. It's all good. Yeah.
Australians always presume if you're from South Africa, you're racist because all of our racists went there. But, I mean, I do like the idea of players from like smaller regions making it, because obviously like I saw how difficult it was for JT and like how much that meant to us, because like I don't think we'll ever, I'm in so much trouble for saying this, we'll never have a South African player that does that again. So like it's a big thing. So obviously when you see, I feel like I can understand the struggle a little bit. So it means more to me, because I know it is so much harder when you're in this like tiny little island far away from everyone. So yeah, there is like a little bit of a feel-good affinity there. There's way too much feel-good vibes happening in this episode. I don't
Okay,
know what's wrong
right.
with me.
Okay.
But like, it is. You feel for him. I just think it would have been sad if it would have been like, okay, you've got to go now, and we're benching you, and then you never heard from JKS again, and then like we found him working at some like weird car plant in like Melbourne
Yes.
one day.
You're like,
So at
hey,
least that's not
were you?
gonna
Are you
happen, right?
JKS? Didn't you used to like playing?
I
Yeah, you
remember
know.
you.
Anyway, do you want the warranty on that or not, sir? It's like, nah, skip it, JKS, just bag it, mate. No, here's the thing, two things. One, apparently based on that, Launders is now a huge fan of Australian CS. Who knew? To think about that one. And then the other one is, don't worry, there will be lots of negativity coming. Essentially, if you think about how we structure the show, actually the genius is 2/3 of the show's negative by definition. So it's all coming, don't worry. If anything, I've also been putting on like a good faith to begin with. And that even some of my points earlier probably going to contradict. So on the whole thing of JKS to Liquid, I actually think this is a brilliant point for good, because isn't it a slam dunk for everyone involved? Especially if you want to add in, apparently he was a free agent. So it's also, by the way, you're not spending big money. Like this gamble just seems like an obvious gamble to take. And if you look at the rest of the moves in Liquid, like you were hinting at, Maui, it's implied to me that this isn't what they thought was the best roster that's going to be here in a year and a half and is going to win the major. This is a stopgap roster to test out much like when you got Rainwaker, so that you can die. It wasn't the end of the world if the IGL experiment failed. I think you've also done this so that Twistzz has a very sort of like low pressure ease into this role, as opposed to coming straight out the gate like Taz becoming the coach of G2 and you're supposed to win from the vent one. Like, I think they've intentionally lowered the stakes. So JKS is the obvious good piece they've added. I agree with you as a player as well. Even if he isn't the player he was in CSGO, which by the way, he's barely played CS2. I don't know why people keep saying that one. People keep acting like he's Hunter and he's played all these times and he's crap. Like, he's barely played CS2. So as a result, when I look at what he did in his career, the reason why, I don't know if you ever saw this, Maui, but you can always tell when your friends themselves just saw a tweet or a headline of a video, but they didn't get to watch the video or they didn't get to talk to you. Because I remember when they kicked JKS, that day I did like a mad spicy tweet. I just said something like, this is one of the worst roster moves ever in Counter-Strike. And I know to Richard, because he's one of those people who's a critic of JKS, he was like, what, he's overblown that. But what I think he didn't get was this. I'm actually somewhat with him. I don't think JKS is a star player. Like, I think actually when you saw him on Renegades and he was their best player, like that's actually probably the highest you can get out of him if you want him to be your player. You have to build the whole game around him if you want him to be a star. And even then, if we're being real, he's aiming to like the best case scenario, he's going to be the 16th player on HLTV's top 20. He's not going to be a top 10 player. He's not going to set the world. He's not going to be like Duncan, Rifle God. So as a result, if you want him in a top team, I actually think the way G2 did it was perfect. You don't even have him as one of your stars. You even have him doing, because it's the anchor role, well, normally one of the shittier roles to do on CT side. But one, he's overqualified for that role, much like the Perfectos of the world. In fact, he's more skilled even. And then also, not only does he do that role really well, and by the way, I've got a point coming later, but that actually, we can do it now if you want, Maui. I also think in the modern day, G2 proves that they've stopped even thinking that the CT side exists. We're just modeling the game on the T side now, because they're acting like anyone can anchor. And it's like, bro, if there's one role anyone cannot do on CT side, fucking anchor. Like, not only is it hard, it's a role that sucks. Like, that's the role where when the game's going badly and you're losing, you want to leave the team / play Minecraft a lot. That's the new way to say it, isn't it, for the kids? So, like, that's a fucking role that sucks. So when you have a guy like a Perfecto or a JKS, where they're like, I actually like doing that and I'm really good, you just get them. You get them and you don't let go of those pieces, by the way. Because I agree with you, Sam. Whether or not Liquid or G2 is good, tell you what, if Team Liquid beats G2, that is going to be all kinds of spicy. Like, all the memes are right there, aren't they? Like, well, I guess at least the vibes are, oh shit, no, you kicked next, didn't you? Like, there's so many. The layup is right there, Maui. You know what I mean? It's right there if they lose. So I'm already waiting for that one. But no, I think it's a great move. I also think as well, the thing people always underestimate about JKS is he does all that I just said, and then he's clutch as well. He's just clutch as well. So if you look on this team, they already have Naf and Twistzz who play really, really well. If you add JKS in, look, I still think as we get to on the other points, they're going to be a very flawed team. But actually, here's the good news. You could keep those pieces going forwards, though. That can be the three you build around in the next Liquid when you figure out what you want to do for IGL and what you're doing about AWPA. Like, we can figure that part out. I think JKS, if this goes well, stays in Liquid. He's there in like 2 years or something. That's like a move with real... That's not the stopgap part. It's the rest of the roster for me. What do you think on that anchor thing, though? Don't you agree that in the modern day, people are almost like taking for granted you can just put a good player in any CT spot or something weird?
Oh, yeah. I was thinking about this actually myself. I think it's actually much easier to take a strong anchor player and put them in a connector spot. Like I would not. I would not want a con player on Mirage to play A anchor, but if like an A anchor like Rain said I want to play con or whatever team, it's like I'd be like you're probably gonna do fine. Like it's not the hard anchor spots are almost like I almost feel like they're the hardest spots in the game now, as opposed because also the thing is that people's executes are just fucking crazy now. Like the amount of layered flashbangs with being able to drop flashes and everything like that. Like anchors now have to basically play a new puzzle game every like mini game within them actually playing regular Counter-Strike because you're like they have to count in their heads like 1 flash, 2 flash. Okay, now I should swing, but I have to like turn sideways when I swing out because there's gonna be a flash. And it's like the game is so different for them versus a connector player who gets to just be like do. It's like I just get to move wherever I want to move, wherever I think the best fight is right now. It's just like that's why this is a little bit of a tangent, but like when Cloud9 are gonna get interz, Axile, and Heavy God, it's like one of them's gonna have to play rotator positions. And I'm like, that's not nearly as bad as signing 4 rotator players and putting 2 of them in anchors. Yeah.
By the way, I'd even say on the JKS point, that's my last thing I'll say, is if people want to see the value of JKS, go back and watch when G2 were on their roll winning all those tournaments. First of all, loads of it's from the CT side. They just had loads of fragging. And secondly, you can see it, Maui. Teams cannot do what they do against normally the bad anchor. They cannot cynically pick off JKS. Like, that wasn't working, mate. Like, eventually you just had to just do a normal game of, you treat the whole map and you see where you can get to. You didn't just go on Mirage and go to fucking B all the time. And as you said, they don't even play Mirage once he's left, which kind of tells you it all. I was also referencing that episode of Feed the Trolls we did there. See that I did there, Tech Girl? That was the point. He made on that show, so you can always go back and watch that to see what Maui said there. Okay, right, let's do my... Yeah,
I like it.
Yeah, exactly. I'm trying to just fucking get the... Unlike Ghostbusters, I'm crossing the streams. So let's go to my good point, rather. So my good point, actually, it's a rare time where it's not about the game. I actually want to say my good point is... I've obviously been very critical of HLTV over the years, mainly because it used to be an incredibly small staff, if you remember. It was like 3 to 4 people who did anything on the website. And a lot of it was just like basic news posts, the precursor, the first versions of the HLTV top 20 and world rankings, which were a bit scoffed when they first came out. And then one thing I always used to criticize them for is if you're sitting on a stats database like they have, and if people don't know, the thing that they let us plebs mortals on the front end use is mega limited compared to what they have on the back end. Their back end is like the apps I heard about years ago that people made custom because they were trying to sell to teams where you can do all sorts of things. It's actually where they get the info for these articles and where they're able to do these filters and stuff. And basically, I used to say to them, how are you guys going to talk shit to me in the content world when I do unlimited content and you're sat on that database and you're not making content out of it? Like, again, like you don't have to, by the way, even though they do opinion pieces now, it doesn't have to be an opinion piece. But if, like, for example, someone's flaming like Olafmeister in FaZe, dude, you have the stats database. Show me an article. Show me how does he play relative to other players on a similar team, or, you know, how does he do with other older players? There's so many different angles you could have concentrated, but they didn't do that. They just sat on the database. They had the basic stuff. Essentially, I always thought they played the game on easy mode. I love this new era. You can see I brought them on all my shows of people like Nero and King Demps, etc. These guys who are doing the articles where they're taking that data. And what's cool here is they're not even just doing the basic stats right up I was talking about. They're actually trying to pair it with a mixture of community narratives. Like, you notice they tend to frame it based on things like who does choke in the arena. It's things people want to talk about. Does Zimu do it? Is it Nico? Obviously now they do it like which roles are hard. I think these are exactly the pieces CS was crying out for all these years. I mean, I'm pretty sure, I'll throw it to you, Tech Girl. I assume in your case, these pieces must be awesome to read. Like, you're getting like a sort of big picture on certain players and teams. Like, it's almost serving up narratives you can use on shows and stuff, right?
Well, it shows up the narrative, but also can feed into some of your other narratives, right? So you kind of are feeding these ideas on the desk, and a lot of the time we're just saying things, you know, like we'll make a comment. And I kind of like the idea, like especially with these ones where they'll come in and the narrative or the comments or the commentary is this, and they'll back it up with the stats, or they'll prove with the stats that it isn't. I mean, I think my favorite was the role positions that Nero pulled up super quickly. I mean, the moment the G2 lineup was announced, he was like, awesome, right, here's where the clashes are. Yes. And that for me was really cool because you get to actually see like the commentary people are making backed up really quickly. And HLTV, I do think it's going to be a problem very soon on broadcast because I think everyone's going to be quoting them non-stop, which is good for them, probably not good for analysts. Like we'll have to figure that one out. But I think it's exciting that they're starting to find new ways to work with that. And it's like, those are interesting things. I know that a lot of people talk about like how written work is dead and no one's really reading. I think that's not the case. I think when you're presenting work like that, like people are good. I'm on it. Like even now, and especially now during the player break, that was also my big surprise was like how good their stuff is that they're coming
Yes.
out with because they've had time to like sit and really analyze things. That sort of stuff is invaluable. And I just think it gets people more invested in players. It gets people more invested in teams. And then ultimately they're watching more tournaments. So we all win, right? Because
Yes.
that's what we need. We need more fans and more eyeballs on the content.
I do have one piece of advice for them, though, which is I actually think the one last thing they need to do to complete the puzzle is what they did on that first one he did, Maui, where he did all the players, and it was like how aggressive they are. And he took the graph and he did that map over it where it was like Lurker Island or whatever, and like, you know, a bay of people with I don't know, fucking hybrids or whatever. If you do, that's the last thing that they could add on there. It's essentially to like characterize it a bit more, because I thought that even though I joked, it made a lot of fans get it wrong, because fans saw it as a map and forgot it was a graph first, and we're saying stuff like you should put him on that island. It's like no, it's a graph. Like he didn't pick where they are. They were there, and then he drew lines around them. You know, it's the other way around essentially. But I just thought that clearly, in a way, to someone who can't interpret a bunch of stats, was framing it in a way that was very simple to understand. And I thought actually they did a great job sort of setting roles within teams up as a result of that. Like essentially, you could go back to that graph to this day, and if your team is kicking a player who does that role, you can look at who else is in that area, who they might replace them with as a la a Perfecto for an anchor, etc. So I thought that was actually brilliant. What do you think of this, Maui? I feel like you're vibing with them.
I've liked what HLTV have done for the last, say, year or so. I feel like the show, we've been running it since 2021. A bunch of my bad, ugly points in the beginning of it, probably for the first year or so, were pretty targeted at HLTV. Like,
Okay.
I didn't like, what are things I didn't like about it? I feel like it was maybe like rating culture,
Sure.
and the rankings and things like certain aspects. Oh, also like the way they order their HLTV top 20, especially when it was Zywoo over Simple that one time.
Sure.
So there were like, I still have my qualms with HLTV, but they are obviously an invaluable resource. And to remark on that like back end portion of what HLTV have, I know that there's so much data that we don't have access to unless we basically have computer farms and are parsing every single demo, which HLTV is doing. So Valen's showed me some time ago, years ago, about the amount of data he and his team were able to extract from demos on previous orgs that he was working with. And you can get so much more.
Like you can literally, like I'll give you a random example. It's like what people think AI is. You can essentially go like Jarvis, pull up like whenever like a G2 player goes through Monster Tunnel on an overpass, what's the headshot percentage on the guy who's at the barrels? Like, you can do that. You can just pull it up. Yeah. It's crazy, isn't it?
I was working also with this company, I think out of Brazil, called Spotlight briefly, and they were showing me like retake percentages on every single map. Like that would be really cool to see. Find what are the most retakeable in a 3v3 situation, what bomb site is the most retakeable, what is the least retakeable, because that would help frame our analysis too a bit. And even down to some really minute details, like Valen, the one that Valen showed me, the demo parser was able to actually extract how much sound a team produces practically. So it was like footsteps, times that they make audio cues with like pulling out a Molotov and priming it, just dropping the bomb, stuff like that. All of those sound cues you could actually and I was thinking when like my mind was racing once I started seeing all these variables that you could account for. I was like, oh wow, like what if the reason Astralis is better than say Liquid is because they walk more or something like that? Like you could find that stuff out, and it really gets people like Nero excited. And I'm glad that he's doing a good to the space by actually bringing that to the table, showing that these numbers can actually provide some sort of value. And on top of that, even on the editorial side, I actually am kind of a fan of the fact that HLTV's going and trying to create some narratives here and there, because it really was a by the book sort of establishment, and the only narrative that they would ever create was the fact that the founder and owner guy would just like put together a top 20 and not like refuse to elaborate practically. It's like fallen number 3, you know, it's like, what the fuck? Okay.
We'll not explain.
Okay, sure.
True. It's like a manosphere tweet. We'll not explain. Few.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. It just almost felt like he's just pushing his own narrative now, and we all just have to accept that throughout history. But now I feel like it's much more by the book. They even explain things about like why is he higher than this person? Why are they lower than that person from their perspective? And they basically are being held accountable. Like HLTV now is holding themselves accountable in a way that they hadn't before. And so for that, I appreciate it. And even the opinion stuff, they make it very clear. Editorial, space, then it's an opinion piece by Stitch, which is admittedly written incredibly pretentiously. And I have a hard time getting through those sometimes, but they're entertaining sometimes. So I won't knock them completely. I still get some enjoyment out of reading those, especially on
Put it so I agree about it. Even though they're entertaining, the problem is he really thinks he's way funnier than he is. So
yeah, I know. His prose is just way too all over the place for me. I'm like, what is you even?
It's like when you're in your first year uni, you're trying to show off every big word.
I know.
There's a bit of that going on. There's a bit of that.
I know. There's this thing like when you're at schools like this where it's like, hey, everybody, let's try to like incorporate this word of the day into our essay. And I feel like Stitch is doing that to entertain himself, but it's not a funny joke for any of us.
Yes. And I can only imagine, by the way, what like people who are already struggling through like broken second language English are doing when they're reading these articles. Like, what, do I just not even know the language? What is this? Like, I can't understand anything. What the fuck is efficacious? You know what I mean? Like, I'm just out. I'm done.
Yeah.
Right, okay, let's go on then. Now we get to apparently Techgo's favorite part, the bad section, where we just say everything's shit and everyone's a loser and all going to fail. So, what is your first point? This is a spicy one. Come on.
I love how you set that up, saying everyone's shit and they're all going to fail and they're a loser. I don't think he's a loser. I think he's playing the best Counter-Strike of his life. I think him being an IGL is the worst decision ever right now. And that is, so my bad point is Twistzz is IGL. What the fuck? I mean, there's this weird thing that everyone's suddenly just moving to IGL in roles, right? But I just think that this is bad. I'm very concerned he's going to lose form. I worry about the situation in Liquid. Maybe this works because you have very experienced players around you and you can kind of have a very loose calling style and rely on them. But then you've got someone that has literally no experience and is probably going to have his hand held a lot of the time. I have concerns about this. I hope it's a stopgap. I'm presuming it's like a 6-month thing and then they have a bigger plan. I just think it's too soon in Twistz's career to be making this move. And I think that we're going to see a fall off in performance. And I don't want that. I really like Twistzz to me is one of the best players in the world. I want to continue to see him be that. I think this is a terrible, terrible decision. I don't know. I think Maui might disagree with me, but I don't think it's going to work.
I don't disagree. I mean, I don't think that this is a long-term move for Twistzz. I don't really. The thing is that the only time I remember anybody ever saying anything about Twistzz being a solid secondary caller is 2 months ago. Like when they were basically setting up this move to get Cadian out of the team already and to move Twistzz to the in-game leader. That's when finally Yakindar says Twistzz is a bit of a secondary caller on his team. And I really just, on the Grand Slam Liquid lineup, for example, Stewie was the secondary caller. Nitro was the IGL. If anything, Eilish probably had a bigger voice than them. On FaZe, I feel like Rops was oftentimes a secondary voice on that team. So, and even when watching back some of those comms videos, it's not like on FaZe, for example, when Twistzz was on them, yeah, it was Rops chiming in with something here and there. It was Kerrigan saying the most by far in those videos. Twistzz would just kind of like call out what was going on. And those calm videos don't show us everything. So somebody might chirp back and say, oh, but Twistzz has been calling one time. It's like made some kind of good read. It's like, that's just not the narrative that we've been pushed. That's not anything that anybody has said about him on any of his teams before Yakindar did 2 months ago. Never really heard that as a fact. And so I'm not really sure what level of hubris this comes from for him to decide to take it up. I would almost, I would honestly say this. At this point, with how poor Yakindar's been playing as an individual, I understand that you want to get him back to his old level, but I almost would say, you know what? Fuck it. Just sacrifice his level. Yeah, just let him keep doing it. You can't get worse. You're not going to get any worse at playing, and you're probably, the only thing that's going to happen now is, are we going to see, now you have to, weigh this by the numbers. Are we going to see now a 20% depreciation in Yakindar's Twistzz performance to see, what, a 10% resurgence in Yakindar's? That's not worth it. That math doesn't check out for me. I'd rather see Twistzz maintain his level, and I'd rather see Yakindar just continue at what he's doing, because it's not pretty anyways. But if you're getting a better rifler in JKS, if you're getting an opper maybe that is going to fit the system better overall and is better than Cadian, then it's fine. So I'm frankly not really a fan of this. I think they just almost in a way really were afraid of the community backlash that would have came their way. If Yakindar said, guys, I'm going to IGL again. Like, we would have all been like, God damn it, I wish they just got an IGL.
Yes.
But now we at least have to wait. At least we now have to throw our hands up in the air for a second here and just say, I guess we'll have to see what happens. And then what we might just get is 3 months of this not being successful. They shift the role again back to Yekindar. And then it's like, can we just, like, why can't we just make a decision here? Why can't we just, let's just put the role on Yekindar if he really wanted to do it that one time?
Much like when they did the dreaded Yekindar IGL lineup, where they went for those like budget players like Rainwaker and Patsy, which were obvious gambles. And again, I think quite frankly, another stopgap roster. I don't think they ever believed those players would be Team Liquid players 3 years down the line. I think they knew one or two of them won't make it. I do think that when you do this move, the obvious problem you have is, like, the best way to say it is, I thought when they had the Cadian lineup, that you only really had like two good players. You had Naf and Twistzz. Cadian was all right. He wasn't Cadian was the problem. And then the other two clearly struggled. Like Yekindar and Skulls on different ends of the spectrum, were just both underperforming and not giving you what you hoped for, and were too expensive in different regards. The problem you have here is, in theory, you've got like potentially an extra good player, because here's the point, right? In the same way as Yekindar had his time where it was bad, and then the influence was like, right, he needs to go back to his role. And then people now are going to tie it, and I've heard maybe in the team even, they're going to tie it to the idea that he didn't like Cadian's system, or it didn't work for him, or he didn't get his input into it, or whatever. Well, here's the problem if you're Yekindar. This is your last chance, because if it doesn't work with Twistzz, it's just you're the problem, mate. You know what I mean? Like, you'll have had three totally different people, IGL, including yourself. So my problem is, it's not guaranteed Yekindar gets better. Like, maybe he just has an issue with his game now. So there's that. So essentially at this point in time, you've still got two good players again. You've got Naf and JKS are probably slam dunks to be good. But the question is, does it tank Twistz's game? Because if it tanks Twistz's game, you might be, I mean, Maui has it a slightly better one. He might be a slightly worse version of the last lineup. Like, tell you what, the last lineup didn't look awesome, but they still fucked around and would make the playoffs and make a run, and they could almost beat good teams, and they could beat some good teams. Like, they weren't totally terrible. They just never, ever came close to realizing the potential. The difference is the potential in this team feels even more scuffed. So much of it does ride on this Twistzz IGL angle. Like, the problem I have is this. One, it's just the most classic, like, mental gap in Counter-Strike, which is the person who has done the secondary calling or thinks of themselves as a cerebral player always thinks, well, that means I'm already ready to be an IGL. But what they don't realize is you did that gig part-time. IGL's a full-time job. Like, it's like I always say about AWPers. Everyone thinks they can AWP if they're playing FPL, Bowie, or they're playing like a random online game. But the time no one likes to AWP is when it's the first buy round after you lost the pistol in the opening rounds. You've just got enough money to buy the AWP and armor, and then you have to literally, on TT, either defend a position or on T get a pick. Like, those are the rounds where when you fail, you're like, maybe I just go back to rifling, you know what I mean? And the problem with IGL is, at least the AWPer who's a secondary AWPer can go back to just being a rifler. The IGL's committed to this role. If you're 1.5 tournaments in, you can't just go, guys, maybe this was a mistake. Like, you're pretty much committed for this season. You just have to do this role, come high watermark, fucking terrible strain, maybe even good times. You have to go through it all. And I think people massively underestimate the mental strain that takes. That's a different type of mental fortitude. It's why the actual all-time IGLs who stick with the role forever, like the Snappies of the world who are going through the hard times, you don't know how much mental fortitude those guys have to have. Like, they have to go through the bad times, then they have to go through the good times where you get criticized. Like, it's just a constant scrutiny role. It's like being a coach in sports. Like, unless you just win the championship, you're always scrutinized. There's always something you could have done differently, or something you should have done with a different player, or some players grumbling because he didn't get his positions. And then also, I'll throw this out there, which is, even though people are going to say that dreaded line they always say about players like Device, if Zipniks had done it, you'd have said the same thing. They always go, well, he's a really smart player, so I'm sure he'll make it work. It's a different type of intelligence. I can tell you the same applied to Shocks. If you showed Shocks a review, his play, he'd tell you everything. He'd tell you where he was going to go, what he was going to do, how he was thinking, how he framed the round. But as IGL, it's a different, it is more of like you're playing Red Alert or Command and Conquer at that point. It's an overview thing. That's a different type of intelligence, I think. So it actually doesn't automatically go. Because, by the way, that was the argument that NBK relied on for a long time. It was like, I'm a really smart player who's secondary called in all my teams. I've done every other role in the game. Of course I could be an IGL. But it turned out IGL had a little bit extra that he didn't have in his locker, or at least his teammates didn't agree that he had it, and he could never get the buy-in from them. And so the last thing I'll say is this. It's actually what she said about the idea, like, he might need his handheld in the early point. That's where I actually think they've somewhat fucked this roster, mate, which is, You're also bringing in Mythar, who's not a big name as coach. He's actually more of a smaller figure. And he's never, by the way, commanded figures like these. He's never had like major winners, Grand Slam winners, giant people who've been HLTV top 20. He was working with like scuffed North lineups and like the Bad Mouse spots, etc. Like, that's not the guy I want coming in. Like, the difference is, if they were doing Twistzz IGL, but his coach is Zonic, or by the way, maybe Zeus didn't work out, but someone of that stature. By the way, Kassad, like people who mega experienced people who can help you in the early days, they can give you some crutches, some scaffolding to get through the hard side. As far as I can tell, has he even ever met this Mythar guy and talked to him? They just walk in a room like, hello, I'm so-and-so. Like, this is like fucking Stewie 2K going to Starbucks, mate. You better hope it works out. You better hope they vibe. You better hope really early on they have the same vision of the game. Because I have heard, by the way, that supposedly he was someone who, even though he's never been, like, as far as I know, a secondary court, as far as I know, I heard he was doing things like helping with the playbooks in Liquid. He was trying to, same as he can do. I'll give him credit. Apparently they have both put in the hours and they've tried to do it. But that also is different. Again, a strat in theory, while your theory crafting out of the server is so different from the one you call in the server. And I also feel like even if you've sat next to Carrigan and you've seen his reads, that's not the same as you making that read, mate. Like the genius of someone like Carrigan, and I've always made this joke to you, Maui. I think Carrigan actually baited all the rest of the world into thinking international lineups are easy and you just put a bunch of good players together. And it's like, yeah, with Carrigan. Like, that's like there's fucking stock in the soup. Like, if you don't have that, it doesn't taste the same, does it? You can put all the ingredients in, but it's not going to have that same hearty flavour, is it? So Carrigan's real secret is he has convinced people his teams are Rops go kill, Nico go kill, and he just goes, lol, I'm just a cheery Danish guy. No, he just makes it look easy. He knows when to make it seem like, he even knows the tricks of IGL that are super advanced. Like, you were going to make that call that other fucking bozo young player said, but you let him think it was his idea because now he's bought into it. And you go, let's do what he says in this round. And you know what I mean? You even know, maybe this is what Acadian lacked, you know when to not have ego and when to make it seem like it was their idea. He knows that he's like on the professor PhD level of IGL. The problem with Twistzz here is maybe he's got like some of the basics, but he is absolutely, this is a freshman. This is day one. This is like, I don't even believe genuinely he can even know he's going to be a good IGL. I think he could say he wants to do the role and he hopes it'll work out and he thinks he's got some of the qualities, but that's another role where you absolutely sink or swim. And man, when you sink in that role, you will like emotionally sink too. That the weight of the world will be on your shoulders. So I think this is, I agree with this as a bad point, even though a lot of people, because of device sort of making it work, want to believe, let's give them all a chance. No, why should I give them a chance? Because in this case, I'll give you a chance if you're an OG and you do this. When you're in Team Liquid, mate, one, you're sacrificing your best player. It was you. You're sacrificing the best player. And then two, we don't even know if you could do it. So I've got to say, I think this is a bad move. Here's the sad thing, and this is why it is still bad also. If I had to speculate the real reason they're doing, like if it was like that game, in England we call it fucking Family Fortunes, Maui. I can't remember what it's called in America. It's that one where you go like, what's an item that would be in a fruit punch? And then you go, banana, our survey said banana was number 2. You know the one that like, that Steve Harvey guy. Is it? Oh, Family Feud it's called in America.
Family
okay.
Feud, yeah.
Everyone knows this game. If you were doing that, and you were going down the list of things to do, like, this would never be the top fucking option. This would be like, like fucking option 5 or something. Like, this would never be the go-to switch. Like, I think this is a massive gamble. I even think this is another one, like the G2 one, where, like, bro, I'm with you, Maui. I might even take the same players, but not make Twistzz IGL. You know what I mean? Like, because I actually think he can. The other thing is, he could potentially tank his own game off this. And if he tanks his own game, then where is he in 6 months? Now all of a sudden that vitality offer ain't going to be there, mate. And you're stuck as an IGL. Now you're in a bad Liquid. Like, I don't know. I'm not a big fan. Because like I say, I also don't think. This is why the difference is if he got his shot in a big team, but everyone was a veteran, that makes it easier. The other thing is, think about the ultimate guy. The ultimate guy's walking in this team like, fucking hell, what am I doing here? And your IGL's brand new as well. And then your Kinder, like I say, you better, literally, that better be like, you better be good overnight, mate. Otherwise, it was just you. It wasn't KDM, was it? Like, we better see the glow up real quick. So I'm with Maui. I think if you just do the math at the end, it just doesn't come out with a bigger number. Maybe it's the same. Maybe it's a tiny bit better. Maybe it's a tiny bit worse. It doesn't feel like you get to the original super team potential, though.
I think for me with Twistzz as an IGL, there's a whole other aspect to IGLing which I think a lot of people don't really realize, which is outside of the server, because you have to manage personalities. And I think Thorin, you touched on it a little bit. You let someone think it's their idea. I think he can do that. I think he's very confident, and I do think in this lineup he probably will be able to do that. My concern is that amount of work. So dealing with the coach, working out the strats, doing all the people management, holding the hands of the new kid. how much time does your game get? And that for me is the biggest thing. You're the star player. It's like, and it's what you said, you're sacrificing the star for what? Like, just let your kinder call, and then he's got 3, maybe 4, we don't know about ultimate, but then he's got 3 really good players. And I mean, how much that they're experienced enough that you don't have to KD in them and have them in your military setup. I would have done it a different way. And then you know that you've still got Twistzz firepower. I'm scared that we lose that. And I think if, like you said, if you lose that, then Liquid is basically back to where they started.
For the armchair psychologist type of take here, I also just don't naturally see him as a leader. I don't see him really as a captain. Yeah, I don't really see the, like you're saying.
It's actually said he's a bit emo. He is.
Yeah,
so he is.
He can, he can get into his own head about things. That's why he's never really been regarded as a secondary caller necessarily. It's been other people on the roster who. And the thing is, with Twistzz game, there's just such a high level of upkeep in terms of how much he needs to do in terms of mechanical training on a regular basis, which you then need to shift your focus into demo watching and strategizing with your coach, coming together with a game plan, finding out what the mid-round adjustment is. What is the mid? If you run out of timeouts, what's that call that you're comfortably going to rely on and that your team is trusted on? Like, that's not there. There's no backbone or structure to this team right now because again, they're starting from square one. They're probably not taking anything from that Cadian roster.
Yes.
If this would be completely different if it were Twistzz were taking over the IGL role for say Kerrigan on FaZe, because everybody would know, everybody's seen, like, if you have a really well thought out system, if like I'm thinking like Electronic for Boomage, I'm thinking even what Fnatic did after they lost Pronax, like you can take a lot of the bones of that and work with that for a bit of a time. You have it's not like you have a sustainable route to success consistently, but you have such a strong framework that you can work with it. And right now, there's nothing.
The whole reason why a lot of us said you have to temper the takes about G2 at that IM Dallas is because, as they actually, I believe, admitted, they just called the Foxy's playbook. Andy had input in it. As far as I know, there is no playbook from KD incoming that's being used now. They're not going to do any of that. You are starting from zero, yeah.
Yeah, I will say one bright spot about this team is actually, even though Myther doesn't necessarily have that sort of aura around him that other coaches in the space do, I liked how Apex called back when they had their original roster at Paris, and it always felt like a team that was greater than the sum of its parts. Like, JL himself didn't even necessarily have the sickest major back at Paris. He was just like an all-right player, an all-right team player, and for him to become seemingly the star of Na'Vi, all in all, it just seemed like it was more because of the structure and system. And I will say this, I think Myther I think he is much more tapped into the meta and like most winning strategies right now in CS2 than someone like Zeus was. So I actually think that he's going to provide something to provide strategic elements. I'm not sure how much he is really as like a glue guy. I don't know if he's really like a great outside of the server type of coach though.
Oh, by the way, I remembered also the point I didn't make, which is I also would speculate if you did the family fortunes, but it was for why did Liquid do this move? The number one reason isn't Twistzz could be an awesome IGL. He's really smart. It wouldn't be any of these ones. But sadly, the number one reason would be he's too good for our team right now and he would leave otherwise. So he's got us over a barrel. That's like the read I have on it, which is that's why he gets to try this crazy experiment. Because otherwise, the other reason why he doesn't just stay as a star is why not just be a star in another team and win now? I think that's the option he has. So unfortunately, if you're Liquid, I don't totally blame you for this, but let's see when we get to my point. Maybe I do.
I actually have to change it. I just remembered Myther wasn't their coach.
No, he wasn't. Here's the thing. I did look that up, but I spared you on that one, Maui. You know what? It's all right. I have to take a ball out of the gun sometimes.
Actually, I have less faith. I'll just say this. I have less faith now.
Okay.
I've lost a little bit of faith.
Yeah, Speaking of lost faith, let's go to your bad point.
Oh God. Okay. Yeah. I mean, honestly, I really thought when they got rid of Hooksy that I was gonna run out of points for a lot of these talk shows, but it turns out that Taz is just gonna keep fueling me. I feel like this move to pick up snax is pure nepotism. Yes. I don't see any reason that snax is qualified to be calling for G2 right now. The role clash between him, Malbs, Nico, and Hunter is so drastic that it's almost like you couldn't have tried to pick an IGL that is playing more overlapping roles than the other players you already have signed onto the roster. This is just, to me, one of the worst possible moves in the offseason, and it was so promising to get Malbs on this team. I was so interested in what they were going to do next with him, but then now I've lost a lot of faith in where G2's headed because I just feel like Taz looked at the landscape landscape, he has no fingers on the pulse at all, and he just said, well, I like this guy, he's one of my buddies, so I'm sure we can make it work, we can run it back. And Nero had obviously the great article on HLTV where he outlined a lot of their positions, and a couple of the ones that really stand out to me and how bad this is for the 4 riflers of G2 is that, one, Anubis, 4 of their riflers play 2 spots.
Yep.
They're all rotator positions. None of them are playing the hard anchor spots, and there's no natural A anchor on Mirage. Now I guess they're making Malbs play that position, which is not what he ever used to do. And when they played Dust 2, none of their players ever played long A. None of them ever played the B anchor. And on Vertigo, none of them even played the B rotator. None of them, let alone the B anchor. So now they're all 4 of their riflers were playing A on Vertigo. Like, this is so disastrous on so many different positions. And yeah, I do think that some of these riflers and some of these top tier players can adjust, but you will lose some of their performances. And the thing is that, man, snax was kind of barely holding on to decent numbers when he was playing favorable positions on Gamer Legion. Now he's going to probably take the bullet on.
Well, he also wasn't the IGL who had all the shittest rolls either, right, Maui? Like, he wasn't the
Right.
guy who was intentionally had to tank all the time. He clearly had some things he liked in the game of Gamer Legion, right?
Yeah, he clearly, I mean, he got to play some of those positions that are generally seen as just flat out favorable.
Yes.
Like getting to be the outside rifler on Nuke, for example.
That's the bin roll, yeah. That's the damage roll.
Exactly. When you see an IGL take up that role, it's like, oh, they're in a bad position, aren't they? Like, it's always weird seeing that, but it's not getting pretty. And I just, like, I was so excited to see that Malbs was going to be joining G2. When those first rumors came about, I was purely happy for him. I was excited for what was coming next, and now it has just taken all of the wind out of the sails of what was otherwise going to be a really cool off season for G2, because now it's just marred with questions like this.
By the way, the good news is technically, since you've announced that our episode comes out tomorrow, that will come out before this one. So don't worry, we'll have already feasted on the G2 topic. So you're not burning any points. Don't worry, you can go for whatever you want.
Yeah, I was about to say, I mean, I said this, so I said this on Feed the Trolls, where I was like, here's the perfect scenario. snax is quite an experienced player. He gives up his roles. Straight away, he moves into other positions. He creates space for Malbs. They allow Malbs to shine. Everyone else is experienced enough that maybe they can change things up a little bit. They rebuild G2 from the ground up, change the way that they play, completely shock us all. Realistically, never going to happen. We've seen this lineup. We know that there's big egos. It's not going to change. I think that they are going to absolutely tank Malbs. I think that snax will be the scapegoats. It'll be a mess. And I also wonder about the infighting in the team, because now you don't have because my impression of Hooksy is he's a really nice guy.
Oh,
and
it
he
does
just
seem
kind
very
of
sweet, yeah.
It seemed very much like, I just kind of went along with what everyone said and I tried to keep the peace. I don't think snax is going to keep the peace. I think that there's going to be big arguments and it's going to be really heated, because no one's going to be happy and they're going to use him as the fall guy. I don't get it. And Maui, I'm with you. When the Malbs announcement came, I got excited. Obviously, when they said Hooksy was going, I was like, this is it. Like, there is a huge opportunity. And I said it on the other show, but I'll say it here. I think Thorin told me like 2 days before, he's like, oh, I heard a rumor. And it's so ridiculous that it's probably true. And it looks like it's snax. And I said to him at the time we were about to record, I'm like, I'm tilted now. Like, I was in a good mood. This can't be happening. And then I got over it, and then I think it was like 2 days in, I was like, well, there it is. Like, what the fuck? I don't get it. I don't understand. And I feel bad for Manassi. I think that the best player in the world is going to, he has such, like, I know that you can continue to be the best player, but you have this opportunity now. And it feels like you're just you're surrounded by people that are not going to allow you to perform. Yes. And I'm curious as to where the buck stops here, because I think someone has to take responsibility for it. I know, like, the internet likes to blame Nico and say that he makes all these decisions, but I think that this is a Taz and a Pekka call here. And I think it's a terrible one. And someone's head has to be taken off when this inevitably doesn't work.
I will say this is actually one of the areas where idiots think me and Maui just like pick people and trash talk them. But it actually takes balls. Like, spoiler, a bunch of the other analysts, if we got them in an off-camera call, would all go, what the fuck are they doing with snax? And is Taz that good as a coach? But they'll never say it on stream, because the problem is on stream, like my beloved Fallen, these guys are royalty. Like, you're not allowed to criticize them. Even if they're bad now, what you'll have to do for some fucked up reason is in your brain, you have to go, but he was a legend and one of the best players ever. And somehow that means, therefore, he'll be like good as an IGL 6 years later, which is like, To me, that's such a fucking reach. It's crazy. Like, I don't even know what the logic is. I always say this about Fallen. I'm not even hating on Fallen at this point in time. He himself hasn't been good for years at this point. It's not like when I was critiquing him when he actually was in like MIBR, but they were like still half decent. And like, I was like, maybe he's lost his fit. He's just that objectively not a very good player nowadays. And doesn't, by the way, you notice none of the players in their team ever big him up. They're never like, brilliant call by him. He called great. No one, they talk like he's not even the IGL for fuck's sake in that team. So same thing with Taz. Taz has never done the coach role ever in his whole career. He wasn't even like a totally like a dictator style IGL. He was an IGL as far as I know, called like a little bit around the style of the team. And in fact, in his teams, he used to swap off to Cuban and Neo, depending on what game we're talking about. He wasn't even the guy who was like an MSL who did it his whole career. So I think the wackest thing here is both snax and Taz have the fucking CS royalty label on them. So as a result, one, good fucking luck if you're Malbs, by the way, because the other two players are Nico and Monacy, and then you're just the guy who you have no aura around your name, bro. Your name has only been mentioned a few times, so if you play badly, you will be the first person beaten. As I joke, even to Maniac, every time fucking Zero has a bad game, Maniac's like got a fucking microscope on Spinx's performance, like, let me get this motherfucker, because that's the whipping boy. If he can, he doesn't want to have to blame Zero, so he's going to go right up Spinx's ass, like, every fucking time. So in this world, Malbs is actually set up to fail, in my opinion. He's going to be playing dog shit CT spots. He's not going to get what he had in M80, and everyone else is not allowed to fail. If Hunter fails, it's like Richard used to say about JKS. He never fails. It's just the team fails. That's what it feels like. If the team fails, people still are quite tempted to even say Hunter sucks. They just want to go, he maybe hasn't found his role. Are they using, was Nexus doing too much? Should he be the agent? Fuck, they'll think of every reason except maybe he can't shoot people with a gun. You know what I mean? Like, so if I look at this team, I think it's a nightmare. And the worst thing is also, by the way, good luck sorting this mess out if it goes badly. Again, who do you kick? Who can you kick even? So the reason this sucks is because, one, I actually think this is the stupidest way to play out what I think will be the last season of Monacy in G2. I think after this, he will go elsewhere. And then actually, that's why it's the most criminal that they've done these moves. Because, bro, you didn't have to bring in massive names. I'm not actually someone anymore who thought it had to be Perfecto or Yimpat or Exertion. Right, here's the worst thing, Maui. When I have the best player in the world, and by the way, I actually think the way he played in Huxley's system shows that was Monacy, not Huxley. Like, Monacy can do this in any team. He can probably play with anyone and play like that. He is so good. He really is like simple levels of CS. When you have him, and quite frankly, Nico has like started to percolate a bit more the last few months. When you have these two players, I know you're stuck with Hunter. Why not just literally do like an American football, but just recruit what you needed? Don't just recruit good players or like, don't worry, I know Snax, like he'll adapt. I don't need him to adapt, bro, with G2. Just, even if it's a lesser player, like the joke is, even though people think this is a meme, I don't give a fuck what happened last year. I would have got JKS back. I would have just said, you know what, JKS, welcome back. There's our anchor. Then I'd have gone, Malps, you're coming in the team. Maybe Nico is the agile. Now you're going to have all your spots. You're going to play your way. Like, I feel like they've done like such a bad job putting the team together. Like, the names are underwhelming and it doesn't fit. Because essentially, everyone coming in is a question mark because of the roles you're going to put them in. Whereas when you already have the best player in the world, keep it simple, stupid. Just put people who do their jobs in those roles. Because essentially, what you needed to do wasn't bring crazy, like, playmaking. All you needed was to raise the level and then make that platform that Monacy wins you the game. If you make it so the team's, like, 10% better, dude, you'd already win trophies. You could have won, like, the major. That's the stupidest part. What we know about players like Monacy when they go to this level of form is you don't even need the perfect team. You just need to give them enough. Whereas I feel like the first 3 months is just going to be solving all these problems. Like, I feel like we've actually like fucking made it harder for ourselves. This is why the irony of it all is at the end, it's like the only way someone genius could conceive of through 5D chess to make me actually think, fuck it, maybe Huxley should have stayed.
Oh my God.
Did I just say that out loud? But like, I have to think that out because here's the thing, right? You know what? Here's how I'll tell you that Snax is CS royalty. Huxley's a fucking way better IGL than Snax. There we go. I said it. Yeah. It's clear. That's a diss to Huxley if you say he isn't. Come on, man. He put in his work. Yeah. He was better than that.
Oh yeah. I mean, when I made my IGL tier list a while back, I put Huxley, I think, like C+.
That's totally fair. You could maybe even have gone B.
Yeah, and Snax was the sole occupant of D, being
you put him last.
IGL.
That's even better.
Kadian was F. Kadian was F for the season he had. Okay. But like the main stat that I found that was just like so damning to Snax is that like people are like, oh, but he's working with like Andu and Slend and whatever. It's like their CT side was good.
Yep.
They just had the worst T side in all top 30 teams. All of them.
Also, by the way, what is that take about Slend? If anything, all the players in Europe hype that guy and say he's going to be like the next good player. Like he's supposed to be like a talent.
It's that's the problem. It's that the people that are actually defending snax at this point just don't know what's happening. They're the people that are living just in like 2015 at this point and don't understand that no, like snax is probably one of the worst pieces on this gamer legion, and all these other guys are rising stars, and yet snax is the one that rose up onto this. That's why I mean, I seriously. I've been calling it for such a long time, but I think that's like every season I have to have some kind of hate crusade. It's Taz. My crosshair is on Taz now because I have no idea what this guy is positively contributing, and I feel like this scene, like you said, it just treats certain people with like this aura or air around them, and it's like, how dare you say this about this person? And it's like, I just don't ad hominem, okay? I just don't invoke ad hominem when I like look for people and look for reasons why people are not succeeding or they are succeeding. If like Simple or whatever says something mean about me, but he performs well, I'm going to say he did well. But if somebody was nice to me and they say they are doing badly, I'm going to say it also. I just keep that shit real because so many people in this space just let all of these other biases and all these other, like a decade ago. I don't care that you won a major a decade ago. We're playing a completely different game. There's been like 30 million patches since then. It's not even the same map pool, relatively speaking, and the entire meta is completely different. So I don't care that he was good 10 years
ago. Here's all you need to know about when someone isn't royalty, so I can give you the contrast. Axile was one of the best players in the world in 2022, and people already wanted him fired from Cloud9 for the whole year. Like, they already were like, it can't ever happen again. snax was good in 2017. That was fucking ages ago. That was ages ago. And also, I agree with you, Maui. What's weird is, because that's the reason they're bigging him up, because of the nostalgia, they're acting like if you say he's a bad IGL now, you're saying he was a bad star player in 20... You know what I mean? Like, it's what a weird fan take it is. Because here's the example. I'll give you another contrast. If I said, all right, I'm doing an out of left field move. The IGLs I'm taking, it's one of these two. I'm taking MSL, or you know what? I'm going old school. I'm going existence. You'd all laugh and go, what the fuck? Mate, that's like a way more plausible person who could do the job today, the fucking snax. Like, those guys could get up to speed in 3 months. Like, they were people who dedicated themselves to that role and did it for a long, long time. Like, but the fact that that's laughable, I hope makes a fan who's casual realize the snax move is mental. It's fucking mental. It's one of the. That's why I agree with you in a way, Maui. Especially because it looks like this was Taz, bro. I actually thought before, you can have your warm-up time as a coach. If this move is bad, you probably should be fired. Like, if you're the one who made the call, bring in my old dude. And the worst thing is actually, to tie into what that Sam said, there's also a mad thing people are going to do, which is wrong in my opinion. They're going to think two things. They're going to think, one, Taz and snax must be best pals. Bro, there's a famous log of like snax shitting all over Taz in a scrim, like saying he's like a moron, basically. So already I don't even know that they do have some crazy dynamic. And then secondly, like you said about the roles in Gamer Legion, Maui, I also do not get the vibe that Taz is, that snax rather, is on some like Carrigan Huxley shit. Like, just give me all the worst roles so you can succeed. He's sort of like, I still want to frag. I want a few of my spots. But then also, he's not the best IGL. Like, I hate that, mate. Because I also feel like you're being, that's a bit, in your own way, you're doing a kid, you're being a bit selfish, you know?
They no joke just looked at the IGLs with the highest rating and then they just picked them. It's like if there's like, oh, it's not about snax, it's not about the Taz snax connection, it's just that, but his rating's good. It's like, please look, even watch one game and just see what.
Oh, and by the way, just cause I am that sort of petty prick, I'll just throw it out there for the millionth time. Remember that famous video with a certain betting company where they used to play a game called Overrated, Underrated? And because I'll give them props, it was that Rob 4 guy, they know what they're doing. They know the names to pick. They famously put back to Nico Carrigan, who he said was overrated. Then they put me, and he said I was overrated. Well, you know what, motherfucker? Your taste in team rates is overrated as fuck. Because, bro, if Carrigan is overrated, enjoy snax in 2024, motherfucker. Enjoy that. Are you kidding me? How dare you say Carrigan's overrated and then play with these bums back to back. Like, are you kidding me? Mate, you didn't even work with Alexi. Like, I don't know about that, mate. I don't know about that. I'm just saying.
I
like rekindle the Nico
rather have
beef
Cold
there.
Zera, rather have Nia.
I know.
You know.
Again, mate,
God.
literally, why is Nico an actual HLTV fan? Like, but they won a major. Bro, you should know better than that. You're fucking one of the best in this game. I don't know.
No. He just thinks they have. It's because they have something he doesn't have.
That's true.
I do also think it's a little bit like I don't understand how the internet works in the sense of like no one's taking away Twistzz was an incredible player.
course
Snax
not,
back in the
no.
day, they were fantastic. They're legends. We agree.
Yeah.
Twistzz is not so far not a great coach. It's two very different things. Just because we're saying he's not a great coach doesn't mean we're taking away what he did do in the game. I always find that really weird. It's like people have lots of different layers. You could be a complete arsehole, but a phenomenal commentator. Like it's such a weird mix to me of how like people are so obsessed with this thing of like, well, Maui's calling Twistzz a bad coach, therefore he says Twistzz is a shit player. No, that's not what he said.
Also, I agree with you. Like, look, back in the day, Anders was the shit, but could you imagine putting Anders on a cast in 2024? I can do that joke because he's a friend of mine. It's all good. It's all good. Listen, just because you're royalty, you don't just keep getting those salary checks forever, mate. You know, eventually you're nicking them, you know. But then whatever, he has kids to feed. You know, who knows? Maybe that's the way through. Maybe he trains his kid and his kid's a better caster than him and doesn't just say like, hey, what are you kidding me? Or whatever. I can't remember what his catchphrase is.
Okay, his one line this year, chopping it up, went crazy. That line was crazy this year.
That's pretty good. And also, by the way, Anders is the only person who can take all these jokes. He doesn't mind. Right, let's move on then. What is my bad point? So my bad point's tied into the Team Liquid one, so we can reference back. It's just this. By the way, G2's also doing this. You'll see the framing when I put it out there. They're doing this thing, which is best categorized, Maui, by that Yanko tweet about G2, which, one of his best friends happens to play in, where magically, can you believe it? He was sort of playing a bit of defense for the potential, like maybe it can work. It's when you do that whack thing that they said about Huxley, and now they're saying it about snax, which is you go, well, you know, with who was available, what can we really, who really could they get? And it's like, bro, when you are G2, but in this case, I'm going to make it Team Liquid. When you're Team Liquid, if people don't know, Team Liquid supposedly is financially one of the best run orgs in the entire world of esports. Like, they've really got it nailed across all the games. It's why in all the games they can be a contender. They're one of the only teams that people don't know. Look, they're probably in League of Legends, they play in NA, so you're never really like a world's contender, but they can have the best NA team in League of Legends, they can have the best team in the world in Dota, and they can have, in theory, the best team in the world in Counter-Strike, plus whatever other games they play. Like, they've really got the finances sorted, but they're not a team, though, that are idiots, though. They're not doing the Falcons thing of, like, just throw money at infinitely and eventually it'll work. They have to balance it out, too. My problem is this. Dude, it's not even just this last one. I'm probably going to do a separate video on this, Maui. I feel like if you go and look at the last 3 to 4 rotation rounds of recruits ever since the Grand Slam lineup, every time it's like this. It's either guy who hasn't even come close to making it yet, it's a massive gamble, or it's like semi-washed player who was really good, Shock's fallen, then you have like Rainwaker Patsy, then you know what I mean? You look down the rosters, and every time you're just thinking, like, again, if this was OG or ENCE had to take these players, I understand the gamble, but why is essentially the point is, why does Team Liquid settle? I think it's bad. I think somehow they set up their rotation of players in recruitment, so they're always the last one left, and they're always the one that doesn't get the seat in the musical chairs. And so in the end, even though I've heard they have tried for some big names, something's going wrong with the recruiting process here, because they're never the ones where it's like, oh, we've got like some fucking straight fire play, but they're Liquid, they're G2. Like these, for me, these teams should be getting, they should be like the first pickings go to these teams. By the way, on paper, you even want to play for these orgs. They're very established orgs. By the way, you know your paycheck's going to come, a sponsor's not just going to cancel, and then they go, sorry, we can't pay for it, but don't tell anyone. Like, there's none of that shit. It's very professional. So I just feel like there's something they need to update with how they view transfers. Because if, for example, Maui, they would tell you now, well, there was no one available at this break. You're the one who sat on that Cadian roster the whole time. Like, you waited until this moment. Like, in the meantime, like I always said about Huxley, the reason the Yanko Huxley angle doesn't work, Maui, is they sat and watched every player who was better than Huxley get signed to other teams, and then at the end said, there's no one available. So the same thing with Liquid. There's so many good players I could put in this lineup, but we can make a great team tomorrow. But it feels like the joke is, aside from the super team lineup, and even that had the Skulls angle, you've never done it. You've never really come and gotten the big names that I wanted for a Team Liquid. Because I think a team like that, on paper, I think Team Liquid should be like FaZe, Maui. I think they should constantly have massive names who are all really good, and it shouldn't even be easy. It should be like FaZe. You put one in and one out gradually, and you just stay at the top. And you just, every time you're not winning enough, you do the one move, and you go back and you win again. So how they keep getting into these scenarios where they'll drop out of the top 10, and then you have to build from almost nothing again. Something's going wrong with this recruit. I feel like they just end up picking the wrong time and then settling for whoever's left. It's almost like they've gone to the supermarket 5 minutes before it closes, and all the fresh produce has gone there. I'll have that old banana over there. Like, you go in the fucking morning, you idiot, when it opens. They've got everything then. Jump in, anyone?
Yeah.
It's a bummer, though. It is a bit of a downer, I have to say.
So which which moves are you're just honing in on?
I mean, the ultimate one's an obvious one.
Yeah,
bro. If me and you make a list this year of AWPers, you're like 20 names, but fuck it, 20, 40 names before we get to that.
I feel.
So how have you, man? How have you waited until you've had to get rid of KD and get a nobody? You know, what are you doing?
It really, it feels like also there's a couple names I feel like that, you know, we heard the rumors of Wrinkle, and then it just feels like it just went. It just was like drop, and then suddenly Ultimate, and it's like Ultimate doesn't even play against top 20 teams ever. For example, like I wouldn't have loved if they got Zorte. I would not have loved it, but like. That's a name that's been kind of on there. You know, and he's also speaks in English pretty well too. So I feel like could they not have gone for any sort of transfer there? Because if I actually see a lineup with Twistzz, Naf, Zorte, Yukindar, and JKS, I feel like that could be a consistent top 7 team in the world. And yet with Ultimate, I'm like, now there's a big question mark. I'm not sure if he's going to be that good. Like even though I have watched some of his stuff, it's like it's against teams I've also never heard of. So that's the problem. And I do feel like something. I think this with, and his name's been brought up a lot lately. Joka Steve has been the GM of Liquid for quite some time now, and I will say like, hey, like I said, I'm gonna drop the ad hominem because Joka Steve's a chill ass dude.
Oh, he's a cool dude.
He's a great guy. He's fed me a lot of information about Liquid themselves, about like just things that are going on in the scene, his opinions on things in the scene. But I do think that the problem that he has had is that he's worked in such close tandem with his coaches in the past that it's that he likes. It's almost like he wants to make sure that. It's not just his decision, and maybe it shouldn't be. Maybe I feel like
he does take a lot of input. Yeah.
Yeah, and so he obviously did that with Zeus, with Skulls, and I feel like even I know that when Daps was on the team, he was one of the people that pushed for Rainwaker and Patsy, and so I kind of wish that, and I brought this up on another show too. Like, you know, they have a data analyst. They have that guy, DeMar DeRozan or whatever his name, DeMar DeRover, I think is his actual username or whatever. Some MIT analyst or something like, or he graduated from MIT. And it's like I wish them two could just go deep into the numbers and find somebody that fits their budget and isn't just like someone that they're just picking off of an FPL game or like I don't even know if I honestly think Ultimate might not even be an FPL. I think he's probably an FPLC.
I guess not, probably, yeah.
So I think there's many of other options that they could have gone for, and yeah, it's bad because it's like you're Liquid. You still have the name draw that you can get the Yakindars of the world when they're in their prime, that you can get Twistzz back on your roster, that you can keep Naf for such a long time. Like all of these people have so much respect for you, and yet you're getting Patsy, Rainwaker, and Ultimate. It just feels like there's this weird split, or it's almost like the problem with Liquid is that it actually seems like this is the one team in esports or in Counter-Strike that is playing by American sports salary cap rules, where it's like, we maxed out Twistzz and Naf and now and Yakindar, so we got to take some budget role players here, and that's why we got these guys over here. And it's like, that's not how this works. That's not that you don't have to play by those rules. And so I can't even really fathom why these things keep happening to them. Why is it every time, every single season? One season it's Rainwaker, the next season it's Skulls, the next season it's Ultimate. Why can't you just have 5 players that we all agree are like really good big signings? Because even G2 waste their money. Even G2 get the random snacks. Like, get me at least a name that I can believe in. Like where's like Imperial? We're in talks also with getting Try on their roster, and I honest to God, I would rather have Henny. I'd rather have Henny over this Ultimate guy. I legitimately believe in him more.
Think of the contrast with FaZe Clan, who, by the way, started in a way worse place than Team Liquid. Their moves in order were Karrigan. They had the Twistzz, Karrigan, Rops, Froze. Like, they're fucking killing it every time the player who comes in is an obvious upgrade. He's a slam dunk. Like, and by the way, why can't Liquid be like that? Because I'll tell you what, FaZe Clan, by the way, there's rumours with their team the whole time as well. Maybe they're changing player in and out. Maybe someone could join. But the difference is they seem to only pull the trigger when it's the right guy. Liquid, like I say, they're just like, I've got to buy something. The shop's closing in 5 minutes. Like, well, why arrange it this way? You know.
I don't think that this applies to Liquid. I think it's like a bigger problem in the scene. And this was in talking to Kassad, where he was talking about player buyouts and salary expectations and things like this. He never said any of this, but this is kind of what I understood from it, is there seems to be, especially for like these up and coming players, their agents, they smell blood in the water. So like everyone knew Liquid was falling apart, and if you see you've got like a list of up and coming talents, you go to them during the player break. I think there's also a situation where you've got agents that are just inflating prices drastically, going, aha, it's Liquid, they're rich, they've got money and they're desperate, we're going to ask you for a ridiculous amount of money. And a lot of these orgs are going, well, hold on, actually, we're not going to play this game because it's not a game we want to play. It's a little bit different when it's like one big player, but when you're looking for up and coming talent, I think that that's also happening, where there is like these giant inflations, and a lot of these teams are smart and they do understand that as an organization that they've got to try and financially run this in a way that they're not doing the Falcons thing of just throwing money around. So maybe that's also a situation that I don't know if that's where Liquid found themselves, but it could be one of these things where they were talking to lots of different AWPers. Everyone was inflating their numbers massively because they're like, oh, you're in shit, Cadian's not there. So they're like, well, screw all of you, we'll find this youngster who... Does he even have LAN experience? That's my other thing about
He's played like an EPL. He's played, but then again, it's not with this crowd. But yeah, he's played an EPL.
It's one hell of a thing to like walk into Blast and you're like
For sure.
you've got Kerrigan and Device walking past you. That's going to be terrifying for that kid. But who knows? But I wonder if that's also. I mean, Kassad mentioned that there is all that shit in the market with the player buyouts and salary expectations. So maybe that's an issue as well that just speaks to a larger problem.
By the way, you can what I love about what Kassad's doing with Bleed is he's actually putting his money where his mouth is, guys. He's doing the moves that he's suggesting other people do. Like the best example is that thing where he got Nork and Jacob, where that's exactly where a Liquid would get tricked, Maui. They'd go, I must have them now. And they're like, I would like to sell them to you, but they cost 1.3 million. And Kassad was basically like, this is what people don't get. The ultimate move in any negotiation is to be willing to walk away. If you aren't willing to walk away and they know you aren't, they've got you over a fucking barrel. And whether you get a deal or not, they're going to get it more on their side because they naturally have the onus, they have the advantage. So what Kassad did on that one was he wanted those players, but he decided to wait. And by the way, if some idiot org had come in the meantime and paid the 1.3 million, he wouldn't get those players. But he was willing to take the gamble. I'll wait until it becomes the price I want to pay. And then he paid it and got the players he wanted. That's my problem. It's actually a concept, by the way, if people don't understand it. This is why Kassad's a very interesting guy. People don't know as his side gig, it might even be his full-time gig, he actually does professional sports betting. He's the guy almost like a stock market guy with like all those screens, and he's watching like this football game and this basketball game, and he's betting them all, right? So one thing he taught me about betting, and I've used this myself and quite literally had a winning record since then, is he taught me that because in the world of betting, you're going to see the analogy here. In the world of betting, there are so many bets you can make, and there'll be more bets tomorrow, and there will always be more bets. He taught me you don't ever have to do a desperation bet. You can wait until it's a bet where the favourite is the kind of odds you think is right for that. You can do it where it's not quite priced in, but I think that under a good... No, you just wait until it is a good one. And then each time you're putting yourself, it's the best foot forwards, you're putting yourself in a winning position. And so similarly, I think that that's where Liquid makes the mistake. Like essentially, as far as I can tell, they had to sign someone during this off-season period. Well, why? You don't. Like, if that means, by the way, that you ended up paying too much to someone in the past, etc., well, that's now also going to mean you don't have as much budget if you have to change roster in 6 months. You've actually compounded the problem. Sometimes it might even be better to write off a 3-month period if that's how long you have to wait till the player's cheap enough. So I feel like if these teams, that's why I actually love, I told you that, because I didn't just do interviews and say all this. He's kind of now showing it in practice that he's doing it on his team. And if you see, he's gradually building that team one piece. But again, by the way, he's doing what I just said, face it, every move is a fucking slam dunk. And these are all better names going up slightly. And if you give him time, he'll get to like a top 20 team, but he won't have spent millions of dollars. And the difference is all these other orgs, they feel like to get the names they want, they have to pay $2 billion or whatever. Whereas I'll just say that to the Liquids and the Joker Steves. It's like, you've got to be willing to walk away sometimes. You've got to get the player you want, but for a reasonable price. You can't just get fleeced every time, because at the end of the day, that is also your fault. Because I think people do that, Maui. Like the most classic example, famous in the NBA, was that Carmelo Anthony trade, where they were just so horny. They just wanted the move to happen so much that the Nuggets just basically took everyone from their roster. Like, you can't do that. Like, at the end of the day, sometimes even the right player is the wrong player if the price is wrong, in my opinion.
I just wish they got JKS instead of Skulls the first time.
Wouldn't that be dope? Yeah.
Why did they do? Why did they have to pay $600K for it all?
Because here's the thing, dude.
Was he a free agent?
Yeah. And I don't think he was technically a free agent. I think that happened like earlier this year. But I will say that does feel like my analogy about the fruit stand. You went there like, I'd like a delicious fresh cantaloupe, KSCERATO. All I've got is this old moldy banana. Or in this case, an unripened banana. You're like, I guess I'll hope it ripens then. But it's like, no. You know, we can go back another day and get, maybe not the KSCERATO. We can get a KSCERATO-esque player, though. Like, you know what? Maybe if we wait X months, maybe actually Vitality makes a move. They get someone and we get fucking Flames or something. You know, these moves are probably there, but everyone in the world knew they had a 2-week period to sign a player. Because that's the last thing I'll shade in. The last thing that is also mega fucking these orgs that don't think through the timing is as soon as everyone knows the lock-in for Blast or EPL, they have you over a barrel, bro, because they know eventually, like, you have 24 hours to sign a player. So suddenly, you're going to, in your brain, suddenly that's 200k extra you're going to pay. You're just going to sign up for it. Or you're going to have to get a complete nobody. Because here's the thing I would say. It's not that Rainwaker and Ultimate can't ever be good. But it's like, bro, what does it say about Team Liquid? That's who you're recruiting. Like, these aren't even one-offs, bro. In the last 2 years, you've recruited Rainwaker, Skulls, and fucking Ultimate. It's like, again, is this OG or Team Liquid? What team are we talking about here? What's going on? Right, okay, let's go. What is your ugly point, Tech Girl? What's your ugly point?
I've been waiting to get on my soapbox and say this for a while. So my ugly point is a little bit off field, and it's specifically around next year's open circuits. Because I speak to all these like smaller teams, and they're really excited. They're like, "This is it. We're gonna, the big teams aren't gonna be able to play every event. They're gonna take a break. We're gonna be able to have our shots." A lot of other talent says that they're like, "Oh, the talent can't do every gig. Like, there's gonna be so much space. All these." I don't think that that's going to happen. My ugly point is I think everyone's going to be in for shock. I think that I looked at the schedule, and pretty much how it will probably run is you'll always have like a day or two between events. And I guarantee you that all those big teams are going to just go, tough shits, you guys have to travel, and they're going to just live out of suitcases for 6 months. And I think the same will happen with talent. I think that the big talent, they'll get picked up and they'll agree to everything. And maybe in 6 months' time, everyone will burn out and it'll be horrible. And we'll have players publicly tweeting out about how horrific the schedule is and how awful it is. But I actually think for the first 6 months, it's not going to be as pretty as everyone thinks. And I actually worry about that schedule in general because I think it's cool that we're going to have top tier Counter-Strike every weekend. But there is going to be such a fight because from an advertising viewership, trying to make sure that you're the coolest tournament and you're keeping the fans engaged. There's going to be such a push for more content, which means more player time. I just worry that this might be absolutely killer on top level players and probably top level talents as well.
So basically, if you want to see Maui on events, you have to go even harder on the people currently and flame them. Like, break their mental completely. Get them done in 3 months, and then Maui will have to be rotated in. So, go on, what do you think, Maui, on this topic? It's an interesting counter take. It's counter to some of the takes we've done in the past. Where are you going on this, Maui?
There are a couple weeks of there being 2 tournaments at the same time. So that is going to, thankfully, unfortunately, that means that 2 people can't be in the same place at the same time on the talent side. And obviously, that means if you're a team, you're just going to pick one or the other. I do think that you're mostly right, though, about the fact that most people will just try to take everything they absolutely can, because that's how you, like, what better way to secure that you keep your space as, let's just use teams first. What's better way to secure that you're a top team than just going to every event? But by actively being at that event, even if you come in dead last, you took away a chance for a ranked 24th team, top ranked 16th team to have that spot and punch up their standing in the Valve ranking. So I feel like, they're just going to show up and just play bad Counter-Strike sometimes, especially once they know that they're already in a prime position where it's like the likelihood is very low, but there is a possibility that they actually lose out. So I think on the talent side of things, that was kind of like I think like the Anders Semlers and the Henry G. Sadakis had this sort of problem where they just kind of said yes to absolutely everything. And then the biggest complaint from parties like that would be burnout. But yes, you obviously don't need to do it. But that's kind of how you keep your foot on the throat of all the other talent, is that you just keep taking everything you possibly can, and you'll just keep getting those grand finals. And if you just keep doing that, or you just keep being at the events, then people are going to continuously believe that you're the top talent, even if there's somebody that's nipping at your heels. So, this has kind of happened before, and I like that you kind of give everybody a bit of a reality check here, because I feel like it's very likely to happen again, unless there is a little bit more security in the space right now. Some people kind of know that they're going to be working with certain TOs for a little bit longer, not that they're employees necessarily, but people, it's not an event to event basis like it was, say, like 8 years ago necessarily. So there's a little bit of that's happening. And so I feel like the people with security, if they don't want to burn themselves out and bring the absolute A game, they should just kind of stick a little bit more, but I'm also saying this with a little bit of a vested interest in the fact that I kind of hope they say no, so that like I'll get to work a couple more things too.
I'll say I'll agree and I'll disagree. I'll disagree on this level. I actually think, again, you're just too... You just love humanity too much. You're too optimistic. Because here's the area you're too optimistic. It can be inferred by who was and wasn't hired to the last major by PGL that, for example, if PGL is going to be a big part of the scene, they clearly themselves are drawing a line between who's in ESL hire and who's their hire. So maybe that one won't have the overlap. Maybe there'll be like one group of talent that mainly does that, Richard Lewis and people like that. And there'll be one group on the ESL side that works with the Saudis and does the kind of Itzes and the clones of the world. I think you can infer a bit of that. I do agree though, if left to their own devices, I don't trust players or talents or teams to actually appropriately like figure out the schedule. One thing people never have understood about my career, it's why so many fans assume I'm lying when I say I turned down specific TOs for events. They think what I did was I'm just playing some sort of weird chicken where I just hope they don't publicly say it, well, I was lying, but I'm getting away with the fact that no one knows who is hired or who isn't. But what they don't realize is I've been able to do that because I've done my full-time job has never been being on-camera talent. It's been doing content, sponsorships on my channel, etc. That was always where I made most of my money. So I always considered I was a little bit of a tourist. I was sort of a semi-pro doing that job. So not only was it not my main way to earn a living, so I didn't have like anxiety if I said no, but I also could actually, especially when I was doing the biggest gigs, be a bit more cynical and be, I don't really want to do that like medium-sized one. Or, you know what? I'm not going to do this minor for the major. I'm already hired for this major anyway. I want a week, 2 weeks off before. I could actually do that. And a lot of the other talent, I think they were actually, I would say some of them were quite jealous of the fact that because they had to do it as a full-time job, they did feel that anxiety if they say no. And then they watch the event and it looks awesome and the guy replacing them gets an appreciation thread on Reddit. All these things, this is the stuff that fucks with people mentally, even though they have to pretend like it's all great and we're all colleagues and all that jazz. On the teams one, I'm definitely with you on that one because this is where players and agents will never learn. You know, when players and agents do the aforementioned thing, Tech Girl, of like, well, when I sign, I want the biggest salary I can have and I want giant bonuses. In fact, I want like a signing bonus and I want a 4-year contract. And when they get it all, what they forget is you do know the guy who runs the team decides what tournaments you play in. So you're okay in this last 3 years because we had a more limited open circuit. It wasn't like the old days before the pandemic period, right? But in the modern day, I'll tell you what will happen when they pay you $28,000 a month and your team is in like 12th in the world. You will go to every tournament. Like when you fail this next one, well, you know what? Don't worry, guys, get back on the horse. You're playing in 3 days. You'll just be, and also because unless you're literally the best team in the world, you can't really predict when you're going to slump. How do you say no 3 months out? How do you turn down an ESL invite when basically, like, you might bomb the tournament before and want to play that event to get back on, get the rankings back up? And as Maui says, you also, by the way, if getting to majors in the future is about ranking points, it's going to be like tennis. You're going to have people who cynically angle shoot. And what you'll do is this, Maui. If I'm like the 9th best team and it's debatable, like if I'm going to drop in the rankings, I'll look on the calendar and see, ooh, this ESL Challenger event doesn't have that many good teams. Sign us up. Even though I'm way better than all the teams there, let's go and farm some easy points. Like in tennis, you go and you do the ATP 250. That's the country next door and you just win that because Federer might not attend that one. Maybe Djokovic doesn't. Maybe you're just going to have to play the 10th best player in the final. So it's 3 points for you. But it all the point. Remember, this is the problem with that system. The points are all uniform. Not literally how much you get from the event, but a point is a point is a point on that system. That's why I do feel like they're going to have to shore up any loopholes and any scam shit like this. As people have pointed out in the past, the obvious one was the betting companies that own teams could just do their own tournament, make it invitational, and then just have their guy come top 2, and he gets more points. So you can already see where that could, again, this is why in esports, the reason you can never have nice things is because when people figure out a loophole, that's sort of what we do as gamers. We just find what works and we abuse the broken shit. So like famously, the example I always give as to why you can never have a perfect system is actually in the game League of Legends. Because in League of Legends, one thing that sucked for a long time is if you played the game and someone quit the game 5 minutes in and you just had to play out like 20 minutes before it would let you quit. So people used to say naive things like, why don't they just let you restart the game or cancel it when someone doesn't join? It's like, again, you're not understanding how cynical humans are. The second you enable the system you just suggested, which in an ideal world of honesty would be perfect, is immediately everyone who's trying to rank up and who's trying to like climb the ladder will do stuff like they'll go into a game with their mate, and then when they're losing early in 5 minutes, they'll go, quit the game. If you quit, we can restart it, and then don't lose any of the points. And so essentially, people on the fringes who abuse the mechanic will just ruin the whole thing. So to come all the way back, I think it's a mix of both. I do think, actually, I agree with you. I think almost everyone will burn themselves out. Not least nice because I'll give one last reason. I'll tell you the other thing that is really hard about saying no is we've all worked normal jobs. We don't come straight out of school, and we're certainly not like these 18-year-old players who think like the 30k a month salary is normal, even though it's absurd. So if you've worked a normal job, it's really hard to say no to an event next month that you know you get $10,000 from. You just look at that and you think, bro, I used to work a year for $10,000. Like, shit, even if I'm tired, you know what? I wasn't really feeling it. But again, it will be nice when I see that number hit the bank account. There's a part of you, as well as you get the anxiety from turning it down, there's a part of you, there's a natural greed it's hard to overcome. Like I used to say back in the day, the biggest mistake I made was I did the grind years when it used to, when the day rate was way lower. And I look back like, oh, fuck, that should have been when I was chilling. Then when it got to like 2017, I should have gone ham because then like just how much you make per event was about 5 times more at that point. So if anything, I grinded myself into oblivion for the €500 a day instead of like the 1,500 euros a day.
But esports was built off of the backs of people like you doing minimum wage labor.
Yes. Indeed. Like, put it this way, I've even told the story before. When I did Gfinity way back in the day, I had agreed because, I was thinking, I didn't know like the rates and what the industry was. So I was thinking relative to my life, is this a good offer? And obviously when someone offers you, like, let's just say like they offer £250 a day. Back then, you're like, fuck, yes, of course, like $250 a day to top say yes, this is easy money. But then the joke is, I was once sat in the green room with Richard Lewis, and because Richard's just a really honest person, he goes like, just ask for my usual rate, you know, 1,000 a day. You probably ask for the same. And I was like, yeah, Richard. And then like, I was like, Gfinity guy, yeah, I need to get like 750. And I'm not saying like 1,000, but 750 at least. And then I instantly, just off that one convo, leveled up. That's why I will always hold a candle for Richard. Shout out to him, even though I did trick him into thinking I was already on that rate. It's all good. It's all good. Right, okay. Maui, what is your ugly point?
Keeping up with the roster mania here. I've one move that it's not terrible. That's why I put it ugly. It's not just bad. It just feels a little strange that Cloud9 are moving forward with interz instead of Perfecto. And it's very specifically just that. Like, I think interz was never the problem originally when he got benched for Cloud9. I always thought it was more of a system problem. When they brought in Buster, there were no significant improvements, which was expected and predictable via most of us, including myself. It's that Perfecto's a perfectly capable player in those exact positions. They already have him on the payroll. And the reason I bring this up as ugly is because I don't actually know for sure because I read the Perfecto interview where he talks about the fact that the reason he's benched is a mutual decision, and I will not explain anything more than that. And so that's always such a ridiculous response because then it's just leaving me completely in the dark on these kinds of things. And
by the way, we're fucking up, Maui. Why do we keep doing shows where we exhaustively explain what we think? We should just do that. Make a provocative comment and go, we'll not explain. There you go. You fucking figure it out.
Yeah. We'll not explain further.
That's the new meta, apparently. Yeah. We're just fools trying to give our reason and show our work.
I mean, I actually realized that's why people like Loba are so brilliant. He just won't explain anything. Okay. He just makes these grand statements, and then suddenly it's up to the community to figure out what the fuck he's saying.
I would say on that particular example, is it a can't explain? Is it a won't explain? You know, a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B, but okay, it's all good. It's all good, you know.
No, but that's the whole thing. You just get to choose. You get to choose the narrative. You pick the narrative there, like Perfecto did, and that's why I'm confused today because I don't understand why they're playing with interz as opposed to Perfecto. When Perfecto, for my money, Perfecto's better than interz, and he plays many of the exact same positions. He plays the same exact roles. I'll say that. It's just maybe a couple position tweaks here and there, and so that's why it's just ugly to me because I feel like when I look at this roster for Cloud9, I see a lot of, I'd say, potential because of, I don't know. I haven't been following closely interz' career for the last 6 months. I saw that he was on TSM, got benched. I saw a little bit of TSM. I didn't think he was necessarily the worst player on that roster, but he definitely wasn't a star by any means. But if I had Axile, Boomich, Heavy God, Perfecto, and Icy, I would just say the ceiling of that team is how good is Icy right now because he's the biggest question mark for me because I feel everybody else is very capable in their positions, even if there's role overlap with there being 3 anchors there because I think Heavy God or Axile could easily do it. And now it's like interz is just a downgrade. And so That's my ugly point overall. I wish Cloud9 were just moving forward with Perfecto, because beyond that, I know he has more chemistry with Boomich. They won a whole ass major together, and interz has never played with Boomich before. It's probably going to be a hybrid Boomich groove system, but interz is going to be thrown into that just kind of like, I've been playing with TSM for 6 months, so I don't know what's going on anymore.
I agree with you. I also feel like it's a little bit of a spiteful move, right? Because you know that Perfecto's sitting there and he's like, okay, I've got to now watch you come in here, and you literally are filling the positions, like you said, that I play. You can do everything that I can do. I can only presume the reason he can't talk about it is because there was like some sort of weird kerfuffle behind the scenes. That whole Cloud9 breakup was a bit of a surprise anyway. So I just wonder.
Wouldn't surprise me, since they're an NA org, if they just NDA'd everyone up the arse. It's like Australia. You're just not allowed to like critique them. You have to just wait until you're out the team or something. Could be.
I'm also a bit of a drama llama, so I'm always like, oh, there must be something sinister going on behind the scenes. Someone will leak. I don't know. Sure. But I do agree with you, Barry. Like, it is a bit of a shit one, right? Like, it doesn't really make sense because they had. I mean, if they keep him in there, they, like you said, they have this incredible. I think I rates IC quite highly. I think he's actually really good. So I think that it could be magical. I don't know if. I think it'll still be good, but it would have been better with Perfecto.
Yeah, the sad thing is I actually see why you put it in the ugly category, Maui, because I actually do think it's not a terrible move to bring in. The joke is he is poor man's Perfecto. It's just, yes, you also had Perfecto. But that's why I told you on that episode, I don't believe in mutual breakups in relationships or fucking the game. What I believe that means is one person said, well, I guess I better agree this is mutual. Like, one person has the power in the dynamic and they get to decide and the other person does it. So in that scenario, I actually read that the other way around, Maui. I actually read that. This is what my guess would be. My guess would be it's actually Perfecto doesn't want to stay in C9. I think same as Electronic left. I think, by the way, there was probably a world where they probably both thought they could go, just like they went to Cloud9. They obviously both great players. I think both of them decided for whatever reason, could be the coach, could be the environment, could be the lineup. They didn't like their experience in Cloud9. It didn't work. And quite frankly, it seems like they want out. And as implied by Perfecto in that interview, where he basically went out of his way to imply he might play in an English-speaking team, that was almost like saying, just come and get me. Everyone out there, Liquid, GT, just hit me up, hit the line, and I'll fucking be there, mate. Because I get the feeling that essentially T9 might have been forced into this spot. So I can even go the other way. If you can't have Perfecto, I'll tell you what, interz isn't a bad replacement. It sort of does the same things. Because I'm actually with Tech on this. I'm quite hyped for this lineup, and here's why. Because it actually has what the last C9 never had. All the roles make sense. Like, if you look at this team, right, it's pretty much for certain, in my opinion, Axel and Heavy God will be pretty good. IC's a bit of an unknown quantity, but I could believe it could be good. He's obviously a real AWPer as well, right? Already then, you've got, like, potentially 3 good players, and then you've got, like, an actual real in-game leader, and you've got the player who plays the anchor spots. Like, bro, this isn't bad. Like, I remember their IGL won a fucking major doing that role, and interz was a very good player at one point on Gambit. Like, I actually think the most interesting thing is maybe it's not the sexiest roster on paper, but because unlike some of the other squads we've discussed, they've kind of got all the roles set from day one that everyone wants to do. Like, no, interz isn't playing some weird forced role that he's never played. You're not bringing in bullshit. Well, you're going to be in spots you've never been in. I think actually it should, in theory, be one of the teams that should be able to hit the ground running. Like, this could actually be a good lineup. And with Maui, though, the obvious thing is, though, if you take the same roster, but you just put Perfectos in there, you get even more hyped. Like, then you're like, hey, maybe we're like a dark horse to win the fucking major or something. Yeah, there we
dark
go.
Horse, damn.
If you had Perfecto.
Yeah.
Could be,
I mean,
right?
I always rate that they always can peak. If Perfecto, Axile, Heavy God, I mean, if they're all just playing at their best, yeah, they can take down practically anybody.
It's pretty
good.
good.
They really can. They really can.
Just I'm with you, though. I will admit, I haven't seen much of interz since he left. I watched the odd TSM game. It was a bad team in general. It's hard to evaluate. And he's a Russian playing on a fucking second language mixed European team. Don't think that was the best move. All right, let's do it then. The last point is my ugly point. I think this is an easy slam dunk, but the difference is the more interesting part's why I've framed it this way. Because normally this move would be an instant bad point for me. And it is the announcement today that KSCERATO and yuurih have signed 3-year contracts. Now, here's the thing. I don't really give a fuck about what yuurih signed. I mean, I could make a really fire joke if you know yuurih's dating about what else he could have signed that maybe got him in the position he's in now. But that's sort of a joke about celebrity, and the status of players. But again, I didn't make that joke. What I did is, because I've mastered this shit now, is I don't actually say the rude, offensive, cancelable thing. I made you think it in your brain. So your brain did that, not me. If you didn't know what I was referencing, you'd be like, what could he sign? I don't like memorabilia or something like, yeah, something like that. So anyway, what I will say is this. It's more the KSCERATO side that's the ugly. And the reason I'm putting it as ugly is is this, is because I do think with these moves, it reminds me of some of the moves I went really ham on back in the day in CS. So I'll give you an example. I have never, even to his face, given Shocks one moment of quarter for staying with Smiths all those extra years when it was like, bro, even when he was good, that was years ago now. Like, you're just tanking your credit. Because here's the reason why I actually don't do that anymore. Because what I actually realise is this. What Shocks was really saying, if you sort of read between the lines, isn't all the things he said. Like, but Edward is a brilliant man and I fucking love him. He is my brother and we have fought together. That's all bullshit. What he really means is, I like him here because I feel comfortable. It makes me motivated to play. It makes me on the road not be bummed out that I'm an older player and I've done it all. I still have like a guy to have let off some stick. Like, if he'd have said all that, I'd go, okay, Shocks, you know what? The human element does have to be factored in. I don't have to do it because I'm observing the game. But okay, maybe there's another reason you can do that that's not strictly in the game. So the reason I picked ugly for KSCERATO signing that deal is, quite frankly, and I think the Skulls and Fallen moves have shown this, so far no one's ever really made a Brazilian in a non-Brazilian team work. I mean, even Coldzera, the best player ever from there, sort of worked, but even then, the keyword sort of, right? And quite frankly, sort of was doing a bit of heavy lifting there. He was never SK Luminosity Coldzera when he was in FaZe or any of those other teams. So I will say, I don't disbelieve them when they imply, I want to play with Brazilians. I don't want to go to another country. I don't want to speak another language. I don't want a different culture. I want to be with all the Brazilians. So on the one hand, I have to honour the fact that if you're KSCERATO, there is an angle you can frame this, Maui, like Tabson staying in big. He's just saying, I'm German, I'm Brazil, we're just staying with our people. I'm going to live or die off that. By the way, if I make it, it'll be a beautiful story. If I don't, maybe I'll regret it. But I'll tell you what, I'm glad I picked the people I want to be around. But beyond that, I think this is a terrible move. I mean, remember, he's just come off a 5-year contract. And the worst one of all, I think I've mentioned this in the past, but I'll do it again just to torture everyone. There were 2 times in the past where they did, in the really good Brazilian teams of the MIBR, try to get this guy, but it's literally a cavalcade of errors. The first time was before FURIA rose up and beat Astralis. But the joke is, then I've heard when he was suggested to the players, because he hadn't done anything yet, they were like, who the fuck's this guy? Stick with, like, I don't know, KNG or whoever the fuck it was. Some player like that, or stick with Lucas or something, you know. So obviously that already is a nightmare, because now you know what he did become. But then after that, when they did rise up as FURIA, there's a famous picture right at that event that they win the ECS, when they came second or whatever, where the joke is, at the after party, there's a picture of Fallen, and he just has his arms around, like, exactly the players he would want to poach. And I always said that was the moment I knew World CS changed. Because in old CS, they would be in that team the next day. They'd just have to inform the org. But in the modern day of buyouts and contracts, you have to go to them, and they really can say, you can't join, I've got you under contract. And I've heard that when they then tried to get KSCERATO, that was when they were getting calls that were like, I just can't come, bro. And they're like, what do you mean? Just like agree to, no, I can't come. And it's like, and it was impossible. So the idea that at the end of this contract, Maui, he's going to have done 8 years. Like, this is like some Bane pit level shit. Like, what? Are you just kind of, the despair that's going to exist? Because I actually think, I said this on Twitter and everyone goes mad because, again, they're not thinking in context. Dude, I actually think this guy should be remembered as the best Brazilian Counter-Strike player maybe ever. Like, his skill set is that crazy. I mean, you saw that stat thing that everyone was loving, the one where it was showing the kills against buy rounds. Bro, the name that stands out is KSCERATO, because everyone else is on all the best teams in the world. They're all on the best teams in the world. And he, by the way, is like fucking, was like part way up one of those lists. He was like, I don't know, like 7th on the, it was like the +1 rating in a game. He was something like 6th or 7th on this list, but like, he's the only one on the team that's come in last place sometimes, or like 9th place, or losing to nobody. So like, he's just so overqualified to be in that team. And you also think, bro, I don't know now because he said he doesn't want to join, but I feel like a year ago, the world was his oyster. I think he could have been in any team. He could have been probably in Vitality or FaZe or GT. I think everyone knows this guy's talent. It's so obvious. And so the idea he might actually, because now at the end of 8 years, that's a career. You might have just run your entire window of being really good out. Like, in 3 years, even if you do want to leave, maybe by then you're washed. Maybe you're just like, maybe, by the way, 8 years, you'd be in the snax position potentially. You might be the player who used to be really good. And if you join the team, you're not going to be that guy. So that's why it's ugly. I think it's one of the ugliest moves I've ever seen. Because on the one hand, I want to go, congrats, KSCERATO. You got your contract in the Brazilian team you want. It's like, but as a fan of Counter-Strike, I hate it. I hate everything about it.
I think if you want to be the best,
go for it.
I was gonna say, like, I mean, I think if you want to be the best, you have to push yourself outside of a comfort zone, and this feels like a comfort zone. It's like, okay, cool. I know this team. I've been with them forever. They give me what I want. I mean, I don't know if you're happy not winning, but like, I'm comfortable. I don't want to, like you said, okay, fine. You don't want to leave Brazil because you don't want to try it. Like, you don't want to be in a new culture. You don't want to speak English, whatever it is. But if you want to be the best, sometimes you have to do the difficult shit, right? And if you ask any player that ended up being no matter how skilled they are, they'll tell you there's that time where it's terrifying because the unknown is scary and you've got to take the risk. So you've got to believe in this is like the weird psychological thing, right? You have to believe in yourself and be like, I am good enough. I can be one of the best, and I'm going to push myself here into this completely unknown world because that's what I want. Maybe he doesn't have that belief, or maybe he's just quite happy with the situation he is. But I do think sticking with FURIA, he won't be remembered as, I don't think he'll be in the conversation in a couple of years. We'll talk about the could have, should have, would have. And it is ugly. It's sad to be fair, but that's his call. Like, that's the decision that he made. And we'll talk about another Brazilian player who didn't make that decision and ended up being a superstar, I guess.
Yes.
I just have to imagine that the people that were in KSCERATO's ear before they even made this sort of deal were just like, there's got to be some kind of Brazilian FURIA Rasputin that's just whispering everything to him properly.
Okay, mesmerizing them, right?
He's absolutely, he's hypnotized. Yeah,
Okay.
he's just stuck there. They even made a ESL skit about this joke about getting him out of contract jail, and he said you will never understand in the skit itself about why he just stays with them forever. And that they even said in the skit, you're in contract jail, and he said he's like, I don't know, I don't need to be saved.
To be fair, there is one FURIA player, but again, it might not be KSCERATO. I think there was a different FURIA star might have gotten hypnotized by some swinging pendulum back. Oh, never mind. But keep going. I'm going to keep hitting that. Look it up.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. Yeah.
You know the reference. The reference. Look it up.
I'm trying to even think what it is. What that's
it's about yuurih. Spoiler. It's about yuurih again. It was about.
Okay.
Maui, I don't know if you know how different human skeletons when they walk. There's sort of a lilt, you know. Some would say it's quite appealing, seductive in some ways, you know. But again, back to the CS. So.
Truly, the god is so unhinged.
No, it's only just it's fine out of order, but don't worry.
It's good. It's a good one. But like, yeah, they had to be telling him something. They had to be they were just, you know, they were seriously making sure that he would never leave. Like, I don't know what they're saying, but it seems like the people on FURIA's side convincing him they're doing such a great job. In fact, they should get a raise probably, if anybody, because there's without KSCERATO having really the chances that KSCERATO did, I don't see how there's any chance. Even I think when we think of legendary players of all time for Brazilian, I would probably say KSCERATO's one. You know, some of that LGSK core you could put highly, but even but I'd probably even put like a Kogu name before him in terms of the history of Counter-Strike, because it's just that KSCERATO hasn't won anything. He hasn't won anything. He's never really been MVPs. Yeah, they're all just been like no S-tier trophies, really, for no S-tier lands, that is, and that's just such a disappointment, because he's obviously, like, this is why the eye test is important. This is why individual player peak is important, to celebrate their greatness, because in reality, if you put KSCERATO today in all of KSCERATO's positions, then he would have done the same thing as KSCERATO then. Maybe he's not as clutch on the biggest stage, because I don't know, because he's not getting to those points in these tournaments. But in terms of pure ability, he had everything that KSCERATO had then, and maybe even then some. But we're never going to actually talk about him in the same air as we do KSCERATO, just because he never surrounded himself with greatness. He never put himself in a position to succeed. And that is also why you can blame some of these players sometimes, because you might say, oh, but it's a team sport, they're a little bit unlucky. But it's why we draw so much criticism for Nico, for all these moves that happen with G2, because you are choosing your fate. It's why people can harp on LeBron, because he's pulling all the GM moves for the Lakers at this point. You know, you're creating your own destiny with the contracts that you sign, or also choose not to sign.
By the way, Maui,
to get Liquid
I even do wonder on that one there, if he actually has made the mistake Nico's made, which is, I actually have never got the vibe he is the one calling the shots. Dude, take the lesson of what Twistzz just did. stayed, Nico and KSCERATO could call the shots in these teams if they wanted. So even if you're going to stay, but get the players you want. Like, I'm going to spitball like a random one here. Maybe he like fucks with some old player like Phelps or whoever it is. Tell him that's who you want. If you're going to stay and the idea is I want comfort, then get comfort, get the player, have a bit of, use your star power and get a bit of what you want as well. Don't just sit there and then let them build teams that don't work around you and have Kai lex you and stuff. Like, that's just a dumb move, you know.
I know, and that's the thing. I just get the thing about I'll say this: there's a small saving grace throughout all of this for FURIA and KSCERATO is that this is the best lineup I've seen on paper from them for a couple of years.
It's not bad, yeah.
I actually think this is legitimately much better than anything they had for the first half of the year, and I actually think that whereas before I gave FURIA a 1% chance, 2% chance going into an S tier tournament of winning the title. Now I'd actually probably put their number a little bit more like 7%. Like, I actually think there is a world. Like, you put this team into a Yala Compass, and I actually think they can win a tournament like that. And that's better than anything they've ever done in the history of this roster and this organization. And so I think that yes, like 3 years is too long, and I wish he explored his options a little bit more, and he maybe even just made the decision to go elsewhere. And I feel like locking yourself up with a FURIA organization that has proved in many ways incompetent of finding the best pieces that you could surround KSCERATO with. That's what I'm most frustrated with about this whole move. But I also think that I think they kind of hit something here, and that Skulls is a huge upgrade to Kai, that Fallen is going to be a better IGL and bring them more into modernity than Art was doing, that they've actually changed their coach, they've signed a new analyst, like they've actually shown that they're going for a little bit of an overhaul here. And so I'm still pessimistic overall if I choose a binary here, but it is a much more gracious pessimism, or like it's much more optimistic. It's much more optimistic, but still I still err on the side of you probably sold away your soul.